I turned and saw Jua Rim, Li Ya's childhood friend, walking toward me. For all the years that had passed, his cultivation had only reached the 3rd level of the Foundation Establishment realm, so he was surely still lost in sword practice. I cupped my hands in salute and told him the family had summoned me for some work, so I had come. He asked, curious whether I had a family, since he took me for a servant by origin. I answered that I was indeed a servant, one of the G clan, and that our 3rd young miss was about to host a banquet, so I had come along with the other servants to help. His eyes went wide as he asked whether I truly came from the G clan, and I countered by asking whether senior brother Lee had never told him. He shook his head and said no, that it was quite a coincidence. His own father had been invited by the G clan, and he had tagged along for the fun. He asked where I was headed when the G estate stood right behind us. He had always found me interesting, certain I was no simple man, and he did not want to waste this rare chance to talk. I said I planned to stroll through the intersect city, and he offered to come along. Though he was no intersect disciple, he had visited often thanks to his father. I did not refuse, and we chatted as we walked. He spoke of his father, and through his words I gained a deeper feel for the hierarchy inside the Taehan sect. Ordinarily, a disciple who reached a certain realm moved into a higher post, but some chose the path of power instead. Jawa Ilgium was one such man, having entered the Elder Hall. Unlike the other departments, the Elder Hall was the seat of power in a city, its threshold set at golden core in the outer sect, and its soul transformation in the inner sect. The hall wielded absolute authority everywhere. In the sect's main city, its power ran greater still, said to reach even to naming the sect leader. That was why some cultivators at the Nascent Soul realm chose to linger as outer sect elders, and keep wringing benefits from the seat. When Jua Iljiam reached the inner sect, he could not yet join the Elder Hall, but he took the post of Hall Master of the Inner Sect Scripture Hall, which carried its own considerable rewards. Jawa Rim complained bitterly that it was all the fault of the Flying Leaf Sword Immortal. His father had grown obsessed, and now spent whole days clutching investiture of the gods without ever drawing his sword. I asked whether he did not think the book was any good. He admitted it was actually very fine, then declared his favorite was Yang Gion and lamented that the man was not a sword cultivator. Once he got started on the tale, he turned still more talkative. I sighed inwardly, for I had underestimated the book's grip on the whole cultivation world. I had written Investiture of the Gods myself under the pen name Ban An, mostly to earn spirit stones, so listening to Jawa Rim heap praise on it pleased me at first, though the pleasure soon dulled. I was hardly the story's true father, and I cared for it chiefly as a source of coin. Afterward, I asked Jawa Rim to take me to the Scripture Pavilion. It differed from a library in that its shelves held nothing but cultivation techniques and spells. On the way, I asked whether any 5 elements techniques existed, and met only his disdain. In the cultivation world, techniques almost always centered on a single attribute, even for those blessed with several roots, unless a man was willing to start over from nothing. To begin a technique anew was to keep one's realm while reaccumulating all one's spiritual energy, a process grim enough to break most cultivators. Cultivation was not martial arts, for it demanded years of patient hoarding. No one wished to rewalk decades or centuries of road, least of all the old monsters who had cultivated for thousands of years. They only gritted their teeth and drove deeper down a single path, which was precisely why the ways of cultivation had blossomed into so many forms. At the Scripture Pavilion, I found no 5 elements technique, as expected. Still, I bought the cheapest basic arts for the other 4 attributes, since I could raise them with lifespan regardless, and my spirit stones had to go first towards seeds. Ja Rim was baffled that I would buy techniques of differing attributes, and when I told him they were for my disciples, his regard for me only climbed. Back in Mystic Valley, he had already sensed how I treated the utility disciples. He saw that I did not merely flatter Liya of royal blood, but was kind to those of low station too. Perhaps Liya had been right, he thought, studying my profile, that I was truly a good man. Then I asked Brother Jua to take me to see the formations, and he agreed at once, though the result left me somewhat crestfallen. Teleportation formations did exist, but every one of them carried an astronomical price I simply could not meet. I could only set the matter aside for another day, since even a Void Realm cultivator could not just walk in and rob them. Having seen the inner sect, I felt certain the Taehan sect concealed old monsters of the Void Realm. The threshold for an inner sect elder was soul transformation, and above the inner sect stood the main city still. Turning it over, I had to grant the sect was genuinely mighty. So many demonic path cultivators had died in the outer sect, and yet the demonic path dared not launch an open assault. Golden Core spies like Gang Gyeong dared operate only beyond the outer sect's edge. If the Taeon sect were a great map, I was working in nothing but a small corner of it. Not until evening did I bid Jawa Rim farewell and return to the front gate of the G estate. Duya still waited there, which touched me a little. He grumbled at once, asking why I had only just come back, and reminding me that without him I could never get inside. I smiled and patted his shoulder, said little, and walked in beside him. Once past the gate, I sensed a crowd of auras, for the G estate too held isolation restrictions. I even caught the aura of a soul transformation cultivator. All along the way, I cast lifespan probe on every person I passed. The estate held many people, and many of them geniuses. Jiayowu had brought only 5 into the Taehan sect, yet the Ji clan ran to more than one branch, and each year its descendants scattered into sect after sect. An incense stick later, Duya led me to meet Ji Rim, the genius famed throughout the outer sect. The probe named him at the 9th level of the Foundation Establishment realm, only 36 years old. It was a fearsome pace that surely owed much to a mountain of consumed pills. Ji Rim was not arrogant, and his manner toward me was quite decent, as he made me a heap of empty promises. I feigned an excited face, bringing the meeting to a tidy close. Afterward, Duya showed me to our lodging, where we shared a courtyard but kept thankfully our own rooms. The night passed without incident. The next morning, just as the sky whitened, Duya dragged me from the courtyard to the front gate to stand guard. We were not alone, for more than a dozen other cultivators stood watch as well, arranged by their leader into 2 rows to welcome the banquet's honored guests. Half an hour on, the guests began to arrive. The very first was an Ascent Soul Realm cultivator, and once he passed inside, I heard the other servants murmur that he came from the inner sect law enforcement hall and held no small power. As time wore on, the arrivals thickened. The weakest of each group's leaders stood at the Nascent Soul Realm, a heavy share of them at Soul Transformation, and I understood then why Lee Haeondo still hid his cultivation. Even the 8th level of Soul Transformation, strong as it was, stood far from invincible. One arrival made me look twice. It was Bu Ung's master, a man named Na Han, whose appearance I had noted while sifting Bu Ung's soul. The probe read him at the 9th level of the Nascent Soul Realm, 254 years old, a genius by any measure. The G clan official at the gate clearly knew him well, and the two traded pleasantries for a good while. Who among them would have guessed the man was a demonic cultivator? I thought it silently, never once opening my mouth, only standing there, which suited me nicely. About another half hour later, I spotted a second spy of the Thousand Autumns Pavilion, and it was Gang Young. The probe placed her at the 1st level of the Nascent Soul Realm, and I marveled that in only 7 years she had already crossed her tribulation. She wore the robes of an inner sect disciple now, her expression cold and remote, stripped of the frivolity she had once shown me. She spared me a single glance without a word of contact, before walking inside. Why was she here, I wondered, for it could hardly be a simple offering of congratulations. Surely she did not mean to scheme against the G clan. Then a shout of surprise snapped my attention around, a voice beginning to cry out my pen name, Ban, before catching itself. I saw Go Yu, whom I had met once at the Outer Sect Scripture Hall, striding quickly toward me. Behind him came a middle-aged man in gorgeous robes, his aura extraordinary yet his presence faint, plainly the fruit of some chi-concealing art. On instinct I cast a lifespan probe, and the reading stopped my breath. It named him Go Jong at the 2nd level of the Void Realm, 690 years old. The Taehyun sect really had hidden away a Void Realm master. The man shared my surname of Go, and was clearly tied by bloodline to Go Yu, whom I had always felt was no simple figure. Go Yu came up and asked, excited, whether I was truly a member of the G clan, and I nodded and said I was only a servant. He cried that with my talent I had no business being a servant, and swore he would have his father recruit me into the inner sect. He said it loudly enough that the surrounding G clan members turned to look. Then he faced Go Jong and urged him to take me as a disciple, saying I was the very person he so often spoke of. The cultivators trailing behind Go Jong, every one of them at the Nascent Soul or Soul Transformation realm, sized me up with open curiosity. Why did everything have to go sideways on account of this boy? I cursed inwardly. Go Jong frowned and rebuked his son for such conduct in public. I breathed easier, thinking a great cultivator was indeed different, knowing better than to trample the rules before a crowd. Then Go Jong looked at me, his stern face melting into a gentle smile, and told me his name and asked me to become his disciple. The words moved everyone present, and Duya stared at me in disbelief, while the breath I had just released caught fast in my throat again. I answered helplessly that my spiritual root aptitude was mediocre, so I feared I made a poor fit for his disciple. He only smiled and said he did not weigh aptitude when taking a disciple, but only whether the two of them clicked. The things I wrote were quite good, he added, and he liked them very much. Under the eyes of the whole gathering, how could I possibly agree? Besides, I had no wish to take a master of my own realm, for even taking Zheng Hyanden back then had been nothing but a last resort. I drew a deep breath and pretended to struggle, saying the matter still needed discussion with others, and begging his forgiveness. He laughed aloud, walked forward to pat my shoulder, and left a parting line as he passed into the estate. Once the banquet ended, we would have a good talk, he said, and even if I refused to be his disciple, it made no difference. I need only do one thing for him, and he would grant my every request. Go Yu winked at me and followed in his father's steps. Once that batch of guests had gone inside, the G-clan members nearby swarmed around me, pressing to know what I had written that could make Gojong prize me so. An old cultivator teased that it wouldn't be that I had written Investiture of the Gods, would it? And I smiled and said, I certainly wished I were the one who had. Duya snorted that there was no chance I had written such a thing, that it was probably some little tract about planting herbs, and the others joined the ribbing. After that, Twist My Standing had soared to its very peak. Just as I looked for a way to slip loose, a G-clan cultivator stepped out from within the estate. He called out to ask who among us was Go-An, for the third young miss requested my presence. Duya shoved me forward, and I let myself stumble a half step before I looked up at the cultivator who had called my name. I told him plainly that I was Go-An, and he only said to come with him. Then he turned and walked back into the estate, and I followed at his heels with a question turning over in my head. I could not fathom why the third young miss Ji Heo Wu would want a lowly gardener like me. As a child, I had barely traded 3 words with her, since the gulf between our stations had been a canyon. Behind me, the gate-guarding G-clan cultivators swarmed Duya to pry loose whatever he knew about me, and his face had gone stiff as he fielded them one at a time. We walked the better part of 2/3 of a mile before the messenger halted outside a courtyard gate. He lifted a hand to wave me through, then left without another word. I could already taste Ji Xiaowu's aura on the air. By my read, she stood at the 9th level of Foundation Establishment, the same tier as Ji Xiaowu's, yet she was a wholly different order of strong. I stepped through into a grove of bamboo that carried the full warmth of spring, with nothing of autumn about it anywhere. Following the path between the stalks, I soon came upon a pool where white spiritual mist curled across the surface. A figure sat meditating within that mist, and through the haze I could make out that it was a woman. I closed the distance, cupped my hands, and saluted her as Goen paying respects to the third young miss. Ji Hao wore green and sat cross-legged, and she was actually floating on the water with her hands folded into mudras upon her knees. Her long hair was bound atop her head, with 3 pearl-inlaid pins, and 2 loose strands drifted at her cheeks. Her forehead shone as white and bright as jade, and across it a faint red line surfaced and faded. In sheer beauty, of everyone I had ever laid eyes on, only Gang Yong could stand beside her. Where Gang Kyong carried a charm that was righteous and wicked at once, Ji Hyo Woo felt like a heavenly immortal come down from the 9 heavens. No feeling showed on her face, and a holy stillness poured off her that made a man dare not profane it. I remembered how, as a boy, I had thought her eyes did not belong to a child at all, for they seemed to have been tempered by long years. Out of habit, I flicked the lifespan probe across her and read the figures in my head. Foundation Establishment, 9th level, 34 years lived, 830 years of lifespan in hand, and an outer ceiling of 8,900 years. An extreme span of 8,900 years, and she had not even reached Golden Core. The truly maddening part was the 830 years she already carried at the 9th level of Foundation Establishment, which no ordinary talent could explain. A quiet alarm went through me, and I understood at once that she was far more than a dual spiritual root prodigy. Without opening her eyes, she told me that I had done well earlier, and that once the banquet ended I should go to see Gojong and take him as my master. Her voice was melodious and gentle, yet it carried a plain, unshakable authority. So the woman had been eavesdropping on the whole exchange at the estate gate. I grumbled about it inwardly, but aloud I answered with the meek servant's face I wore in public. I told her that in truth I had no wish to take him as a master, since I could tell his standing was far from simple and his cultivation surely towering. My own aptitude, I said, was middling, and binding myself to a famous master would only drag trouble to my door. I wanted nothing more than to stay in my medicine valley and see out my days in peace. Being allowed to send the third young miss a batch of herbs each year was satisfaction enough for me. At that she opened her eyes, and the mist before her thinned and cleared. She tilted her head and studied me sidelong, and the outer corners of her eyes swept slightly upward, lending a touch of haughtiness to their softness. Those bright eyes seemed to want to read straight through to my heart. I lowered my head a little and did not meet her gaze. It was not that she frightened me, for my public self was only a 9th level chi refining servant, and I had to play the part all the way through. She told me then that if I did not want him as a master, I need not take him, but that Gojong wished to see me, and so I still had to go. She acknowledged the matter was a hard one for me, and asked what she could do in return, promising that anything within her power she would do. Perhaps because she had saved me once when I was small, I held a soft spot for her, so I did not stand on ceremony. I told her the mystic valley I tended was too cramped, and that I longed to plant more herbs, so I asked whether she might help me obtain a second medicine valley. I begged her, though, not to transfer me away from Mystic Valley, since all my labor was buried in that soil and I could not bear to leave it. She fell silent, weighing the request, and I felt no urgency to press her. If she could not manage it, I would simply ask Gojong to do the same, for I could already guess roughly what he wanted from me. What else would anyone want from a writer, after all? At last she spoke, saying she could not fully promise the matter of the valley, since this was not the G clan's own ground. Because I refused to leave my patch though, she would do her utmost. Beyond that, she added, I might make one more request. I asked at once whether she could grant me a set of teleportation formation, so I might link the two valleys and travel between them with ease. She said that was no trouble, and that she would have it delivered to me once the banquet ended. I thanked her and cupped my hands again in a bow. Then she closed her eyes and asked, almost idly, just what it was I had written, that Gojong should prize me so highly as to want me for a disciple. I thought it over and judged that the truth could not stay hidden much longer. After today she might well investigate me, so it seemed wiser to be frank, and in the future the G-clan might even shield me for it. I answered with 4 words, investiture of the gods. Her eyes snapped open, and she turned her head sharply toward me, astonishment breaking across her features for the first time. She asked whether I had truly written it, and how I could possibly know so much. I told her helplessly that it was all something I had made up, and that none of it was real. Lately, far too many people had begun insisting the tale described a stretch of genuine ancient history, and Jawa Rim, Oshin, and others all believed the same, which had unsettled me for a while. Had I not combed the outer sect library and found not a single record touching on Hwaha, I might have half convinced myself the story was true. She said softly that if I had made it up, then the world I had drawn was impossibly vast, and the Tao techniques within it were spellbinding. Plainly, she loved reading the thing too. I put on an awkward tongue-tied look, as though I had no idea how to reply. She warned me sternly that I must never breathe a word of this to anyone, for the tale's influence had grown too great. The name Ban An had already spread across the whole Taichang dynasty, drawing other sects who wished to find me. Then she thought for a moment and raised her right hand, and the jade ring on her middle finger flashed. A small bronze sword appeared in her palm, and she told me it was a talisman treasure. She explained that I need only pour spiritual power into it to wake it, that it could slay a golden core cultivator, and that I should keep it for my own preservation. I gave the little bronze sword a second, longer look. This was my first time handling such a thing, though Gang Yong had once described them to me. She had said a talisman treasure could never be claimed as one's own, since it drew on stored spiritual power to work. Elders, she had told me, often left them for their juniors as a means of survival. I had not imagined I would enjoy one so soon, so I did not refuse and accepted the sword. She told me to go back to my room and rest, and that I need not stand at the gate any longer. Then she closed her eyes again, and her tone slid back into its old indifference. I saluted, turned, and left. Once outside the courtyard, I found myself quietly puzzled, for a thread of some indescribable, unclear aura clung to her, an aura that inexplicably made a man want to seize it. I pushed the thought aside and walked toward my own quarters. As more and more guests arrived, the G estate had grown crowded and loud, with people at every turn, and the naked hierarchy of the realms was on full display. Soul transformation cultivators chatted and laughed at their ease. Nascent soul figures attended them from the side, and golden core cultivators could only scurry about at everyone's beck and call. As I walked, I suddenly saw someone I knew, Gang Gyeong. We came upon each other in a corridor, face to face, and I stayed perfectly calm, my expression unchanged, and hers was the same. We brushed past one another with scarcely 2 feet between us, and in that instant I felt a jade pendant pressed into my left palm. Her voice slid into my ear by a sound transmission technique, telling me to return to my room and probe the pendant with my divine sense. The two of us, she added, were to go on as though we had never met. I closed my hand around it and walked on without a backward glance, and we parted like utter strangers. Inside my room, I sat cross-legged on the bed, the pendant clutched in my left hand with the back of my hand turned up, so that even here it stayed hidden. I set my divine sense into the jade, and before long my brow furrowed. A remnant of Gang Yong's divine sense waited inside, laying out why she had come to the Ji estate. Her true target this time was Ji Haowu herself, and she was not alone, for the Thousand Autumns Pavilion and other demonic path sects had all planted spies here, every one of them hungry to seize the innate Tao rune within Ji Haowu's body. An innate Tao rune, the remnant explained, was a most peculiar power, like a bloodline carried inherent from birth. Once its bearer reached Golden Core, the rune would surface upon the core. From that moment, so long as the core itself was torn away, the rune would leave the cultivator's body with it. By Gang Gyeong's account, a Tao rune was harder to meet than a chance in 10,000 years, rarer even than a heavenly spiritual root. It held the vast fortune of remaking a person's fate. No wonder Ji Hyowoo's span was so grotesquely long. The rune accounted for all of it. Now I was caught square in the middle. On one side stood Gang Yeong, on the other Ji Hyowoo, and I could not begin to say whom I ought to back. To the depths with both of them then, for I would side with neither. Gang Gyeong would not move until the banquet had run its course, since she had to wait for Ji Hyowoo to reach Golden Core. By then, I would already be safely home in Mystic Valley. Still, my curiosity about the rune gnawed at me, and I wondered whether the strange aura I had felt on her earlier was its scent. Even I, who had crossed into the void realm, could not smother a flicker of greed, which told me plainly how terrible the power sleeping in that rune must be. The days of the banquet slid by without incident, and none of the lurking demonic cultivators risked a move. At noon, Ji Hyowu even performed the Kirin step for the assembled guests, and I watched from my courtyard. She walked out into the open and climbed into the air, one tread at a time, and with each step a Kirin Dharma image bloomed beneath her feet. After 7 steps, the images sheathed her whole body, so that 7 dark red Kirin seemed to stand suspended in the sky, a spectacle to behold. With my sight, I could tell she had 2 more steps in her, and that 9 was the ceiling of her present Kirin step. Yet 9 was not the true limit of the art, for at its peak, a cultivator could walk a full 1,000 steps. 1,000 Kirin would move like clones, hemming in a foe or bewildering him. To have mastered the Kirin step at 34 made her remarkable beyond doubt, and on the strength of it alone, she could sweep aside anyone of her own realm. That evening, Duya brought Gojong and Goyu to find me. Once he had shown them in, Duya withdrew, not daring to intrude. An hour later, Gojong left wearing a satisfied smile, and I saw them out to the courtyard gate. Goyu turned back, threw me a wink, and reminded me that he must have plenty of female confidants in the book. At most in half a year, he promised, he would come to find me, and the Medicine Valley I wanted would certainly be no small thing. Gojong had sought me out to have his life story set down in a book, and naturally I would not refuse. It was hardly as if he wanted to be written as the hero of Investiture of the Gods. In exchange, he would raise my station to Outer Sect Disciple and bestow on me a Medicine Valley twice the size of Mystic Valley. In half a year, Goyu would arrive bearing the goods. Trading a book for a valley struck me as no bad bargain. And besides, I had little enough to fill my ordinary days. That night, once Duya was back in the room, he pressed me about why Gojong had come. I asked him meaningfully whether he was certain he wanted to pry into a sect secret, and the question rattled him so badly that he shivered and let the matter drop. Early the next morning, as the guests began to disperse, a cultivator found me and handed over a storage pouch, saying it came from the 3rd young miss. I swept it with my divine sense and found it packed with a rich variety of formation materials. For a moment I wavered over whether to warn Ji Hyowu. Then I noticed that the Ji clan cultivators at the estate had grown more numerous rather than fewer, with many perched on the eaves, and I understood the clan had already scented the crisis. Since that was so, there was nothing left for me to fret over. At noon I departed with Duya, riding the teleportation formation back to the Outer Sect City as before. After we parted ways, I turned toward Mystic Valley, already sketching out in my mind the planting scheme for the 2nd valley. With Lee Hyondo's valley added to the count, I would soon hold 3 medicine valleys and my future harvest of lifespan was bound to soar. Even standing at the 1st level of the Void Realm, I would never complain of having too little lifespan. There were surely many realms beyond the Void, and the higher one climbed the more lifespan the road demanded. My aim was immortality, the very summit of the cultivator's path. Riding my flying sword through the open sky, I stood in the wind with a dream of deathless ages folded quietly in my chest. When I reached Mystic Valley, my brow furrowed at once. I stepped down from the blade, and it dove into my storage pouch as Yeon, weeding nearby, spotted me and hurried over. He reported straight away that a senior had come to the valley the day before and stayed a while. I nodded and told him I already knew, and sent him back to his work. In truth, I had noticed the flags tucked among the weeds around the valley, plainly a formation of some kind. I sensed the intruder's aura, feigned obliviousness to the array, and started toward the source of that aura, running my eye over my herbs along the way. Good heavens, 6 4th-tier medicinal herbs had gone missing outright, and my gaze turned cold in an instant. The other party's cultivation was no small matter, for he sat in the soul transformation realm. Yet even so, whoever dared steal my herbs would answer for it. I arrived at a small courtyard and found a man inside refining medicinal pills. His pill furnace looked ancient, half a person tall, wisps of blue smoke rising from its mouth. The one tending it was a hunched old man, short and thick-set, his graying hair bound behind his head with a straw cord. I read him off in a heartbeat. Chu Chenri, soul transformation, 2nd level, 486 years lived, 930 of lifespan in hand, a ceiling of 1,050. Once I had confirmed he hid no higher cultivation, I stepped up and demanded his name and where he hailed from, my tone harsh in a way I never used with anyone. He rose, turned to face me, and said with a chuckle that his name was Chu Qianri, that he was merely passing through the valley, and that he wished to stay a few days. I asked whether he came from the Taehan sect, for with Ji Hyowu so near to Golden Core, I had every reason to be wary of him. Ordinarily, no one of the soul transformation realm ever wandered into my valley. The disciples at their tasks kept stealing glances toward the courtyard, and I could tell they had all felt the weight of his background, so my return had eased them a little. He chuckled again and asked whether I was the owner of the valley, and I confirmed that I was, then demanded again why he would not answer me. He shook his head, laughing low, and muttered that a mere chi-refining rogue dared address him in such a tone. Then he dropped into a squat and slapped his palm flat against the earth. The ground bucked, and the great flags hidden in the surrounding woods trembled and spat out strands of devilish chi. The dark energy climbed fast, weaving itself into a demonic net that sealed the whole of Mystic Valley, and then the net turned transparent, as if nothing had happened at all. I asked in mock panic what he thought he was doing. The disciples in the distance felt that something had gone wrong and came rushing in. So Qian and Yeon reached us first, then Oshin, Yeonjin, and Sohan, while the rest hung back at the courtyard's edge, watching in fright. Sohan stood at the very front gripping a sword, though his trembling legs betrayed how terrified he was. Yeonjin's face had gone corpse pale, yet she planted herself in front of me all the same, which nearly made me laugh. Foolish girl. Devilish chi wrapped Chu Chanri's right palm as he rose slowly, a hideous grin spreading over his face. He said that since the Valley Master had returned, he would drop the pretense. If we wished to live, we would obey him meekly, he warned, or else he would peel our skin and draw out our souls until we wished for death. His terrible aura pressed down, and dread rippled through every disciple. Oshin gathered his courage and said that they were all utility disciples, that refining their souls would win him nothing, and asked plainly what it was he wanted them to do. He was afraid I would fail to gauge the man's true strength, so he had spoken first to spare me. Chu Chanri sneered that Oshin was a sensible boy, and declared that from now on they would wait in the valley for his orders, since he meant to use it for refining pills. He warned them against any thought of fleeing, boasting that his formation was invisible and colorless. Even a golden core cultivator who so much as brushed it, he claimed, would dissolve into a pool of blood. Everyone had just watched the array take shape, so they swallowed his words whole. Then he looked at me and taunted that he would tell me now he was of the 10,000 yin sect, and asked what I meant to do about it. The 10,000 yin sect again. They truly clung like ghosts that would not disperse. In this whole life I had killed few men, and every one of them save Buong had belonged to that sect. I feigned terror and said through gritted teeth that I begged the senior's pardon for my earlier offense. So long as he spared my disciples, I pleaded, he might command me as he pleased, and if he must refine souls, he should refine mine first. The disciples grew frantic at the words, though none dared make a sound for fear of provoking him. Oshin clenched his hands within his sleeves, cursing himself in silence for having cultivated so idly. He wished he had pushed his technique to major achievement, so that he need not watch his senior brother beg. Gyeonjin, Sochan, Sohan, and Yeon all wore much the same regret. Chu Chanri only laughed, a low, mocking sound. I hurried to add that I kept a 5th-tier herb in my room, one ideally suited as a medicinal primer, and asked whether he wanted it. He waved his sleeve, said I was quite sensible, and told me to be quick about it. I spun on my heel and ran toward my pavilion, while the others watched him warily, afraid he might do something rash. He picked at his ear, looked at Kyeonjin, and smiled that the little girl should come and help him. His malice turned her stomach, though fear weighed heavier still, and she stood frozen, unable to decide what to do. Judging by the formation just now, there was surely no one in the valley who could match the demonic cultivator. While Yeonjin stood locked in dread, a purple-black figure took shape out of thin air at Chu Chanri's side. His pupils shrank, and he wheeled his head around on instinct. So fast, it could not be. Before he could bring a technique to bear, the newcomer's right hand thrust out like a blade, punched clean through his chest, and hauled him into the air. His eyes bulged as he stared down in disbelief at the one beneath him. That figure was sheathed in dark purple chi, its true face hidden, as though it had risen from the 9 nether yellow springs. Oshin, Gyeonjin, and the rest recoiled together, terrified by the thing that had appeared from nowhere. Chu Chanri named it in a shaking voice, calling it the Thousand Autumns Pavilion, the demonic shadow divine technique, and his tone was drenched in fear. He found to his despair that he could not stir a shred of the spiritual power in his body. That single strike had shattered his golden core, and the shadow's overbearing power had pinned his primordial spirit fast within him, so that he could not perform soul emergence. His attacker had to stand above the soul transformation realm. I, having worked the great yin-yang transformation, glanced back at Oshin, whose face was already changing, as though a suspicion had struck him. Then the hand that had pierced Chu Chanri closed into a fist, and a terrible surge of sword chi burst out, tearing his body apart in an instant. Only his primordial spirit remained, dangling from the shadow's arm, while his storage pouch dropped into the other hand. Blood and flesh scattered wide, spattering Oshin and the others, but they were too far out of their wits to react, and only stood there dazed. Chuche Ronnery's primordial spirit trembled and got out a single broken syllable of senior before my overbearing power crushed it to nothing. My shadow form melted into the air. A breath later, the sound of a door being kicked open carried from the pavilion, and I leapt down from its balcony with a fifth-tier tiger blood flower in hand. I bolted toward the courtyard where the disciples stood, shouting for the senior not to act rashly. I vaulted the courtyard wall and landed at Kyunjin's side, and my eyes swept the bloodstains everywhere before I turned quickly to count the disciples. Only after seeing that not one was missing did I let out a breath, and I asked in a hushed, frightened voice where the devil had gone, as though I feared Chu Chanri might hear. Kyunjin seemed to wake at that, screamed, then seized my robe and stammered that he was dead, that he had been. The others roused as well and whipped their heads about, dreading that the mysterious shadow might return. It took me a good while to piece together what had happened from their broken accounts. Acting, I had to admit, was exhausting work. I told the disciples to stay on the highest guard and not to slacken. At the same time, I pressed down quietly with my right foot, letting my spiritual power spread through the ground to unravel the invisible formation. A curtain of devilish chi flared above Mystic Valley, and then the demonic array began to collapse. The dark energy scattered as though it had never been, and the autumn leaves drifted down from the peak in its wake. Ye Yun asked cautiously whether the formation had lifted. Oh Shin drew a deep breath, looked at me, and said we should go elsewhere to talk. Killing Chu Chonri had earned me 66 years of lifespan, which was not a poor return. In a fine mood, I feigned a puzzled face, hesitated for effect, then nodded. The two of us walked into my pavilion while the other disciples clustered together to hash over what they had seen. Once inside, Oshin shut the door and turned to me. He said through his teeth that the one who had struck must be a great cultivator of the Thousand Autumns Pavilion, and that his father might well have sent someone to protect him. Watching the tangle of feeling on Oshin's face, I wanted badly to laugh, but my long years of play acting held my expression in check. I let myself look moved instead, my features shifting from shock to relief, and at last to tension. Seeing his senior brother's face change so, Oshin grew more awkward still, yet he did not regret sharing the matter. Ever since we had opened our hearts to each other the last time, he had felt I was the person nearest to him, and believed there should be no secrets between us. I drew a deep breath and told him gravely that this could never be spoken of, or I would not be able to protect him. He nodded soberly, and the memory of the earlier battle made him shudder. I asked, all curiosity, whether he had recognized the man and at what realm he stood, for I wanted to sound the depth of the Thousand Autumns Pavilion. He scratched his head and guessed that he had not seen the true face. The figure might be Nascent's soul, he thought, since the movement had been far too swift for a golden core cultivator to manage. That struck me dumb. The silly boy. I sighed and pointed out that his father, whom he claimed cared nothing for him, had after all sent someone to keep him safe. He guessed instead that his father truly did not care. Perhaps the man only feared his son would shame him, or the one who attacked simply happened to be at the Taehan sect on some errand. He was not moved in the least and stayed as set against his father as ever. After a few more instructions, I took Oshin back downstairs. I did not let the disciples clean the courtyard, but preserved the scene whole so that Oshin might carry word to the law enforcement hall of the outer sect the next day. Every disciple in the valley had witnessed the fight, so the matter could not be buried, and it was far better to inform the Taehan sect ahead of time. I stood before Chu Chainri's pill furnace and studied the medicinal liquid within, unable to name the pill he had been refining, so I decided to keep it and let the Taehan sect judge. That night I went down into the 8 Sceneries Grotto Heaven. After feeding the sky dragon its usual mutton, I drew out Chu Chanri's storage pouch, emptied everything from it, and then destroyed the pouch. A soul transformation cultivator was indeed a wealthy man, for the spirit stones and spiritual chi pills alone came to a staggering sum. I went through it all piece by piece, burning anything useless so that no one could trace it back to me, and I scrubbed his imprint from each magical artifact until they were ownerless. In the end, only a letter remained, a blank sheet that had to be read with divine sense, and one had to hold soul transformation cultivation to pry into it at all. When I probed it, I learned why he had come. He had come for the Init Dao rune. His mission had been to rendezvous with the spies of the 10,000 Yin cult who were angling to snatch the rune out in the outer sect. So besides the Thousand Autumns Pavilion, the 10,000 Yin cult too had seated many agents within the Taeon sect. To hand Chu Chanri the task of the meeting, that other man's cultivation surely ran deep. Demonic path spies truly slithered everywhere. How many were there like me, unable to move by their own will? I sighed inwardly at the thought, then rose to look over the herbs growing in the grotto. Early the next morning, Oshin took Dang Wu and Sohan out to the outer sect, while I set the rest of the disciples to their usual labor of herding sheep, weeding, and watering. By noon, the three were back. They had returned so quickly because they had ridden the magical artifact of a golden core cultivator, a great red wooden fan with dozens of people standing upon it. Yi Ran had come along too. After everyone had landed, I went up to greet them. The party was led by an elder of the law enforcement hall named Moyon Yang. My probe read him as Golden Core, 3rd level, 268 years lived, 503 of lifespan in hand, a ceiling of 908. He wore a purple robe, stood tall, and had a handsome face with hair gone half black and half white, and every gesture carried the bearing of a man used to command. After hearing me lay out how the whole affair had unfolded, he nodded slightly and said I had done well. They would sweep the region next, he added, and by no means permit demonic path cultivators to lurk there. I thanked him at once. The law enforcement disciples did not linger over conversation with those of the valley, but went to Sochion's courtyard, and the sight of the bloodstains on the walls and ground horrified them all. Moyon Young came to Chu Chanri's pill furnace, peered inside, and his brow drew together quickly. Off to one side, Ye Ran came over to comfort me. I had sent Oh Shin to find her first, since a word from her made it far easier to move the law enforcement hall. The moment she heard trouble had struck Mystic Valley, she had wished to rush straight here. About half the burning of an incense stick later, Moyon Yang took the furnace away and summoned his disciples to depart. Watching their retreating figures, Gyeonjin could not help but turn to me and ask whether that was truly the end of it. I had never expected the law enforcement hall to do much. For so long as the matter was reported, it would suffice, and I had no wish to be branded a demonic path spy. I smiled and told her they would investigate, and that at the very least she should trust her junior marshal uncle Ye. She heard the sense in it, yet the hall's coolness needled her all the same, and she vowed inwardly to become an outer sect disciple as soon as she could. Chu Chanri had been a mere setback for the valley, but for me he was a warning. How many times had Mystic Valley brushed against such danger? No. I had to raise my cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 7 days slipped past. One night I quietly left the valley, traveled to a mountain forest 100 miles off, and sat down. I called up my attribute panel and fixed my gaze on the Divine Wood Pure Yang art, resolving to improve the technique first, and I poured in 10,000 years of lifespan. In the end, the Divine Wood Pure Yang art completed its upgrade and became the Yang Wood Primordial Chaos Cultivation technique, its attainment likewise standing at the consummate level. The new technique had also woken a divine ability, which delighted me. I raised the lifespan barrier and let the technique pour into me as inheritance. Half an hour later, the inheritance ended, and I grasped the depths of the divine ability. It was called Yang Wood Myriad Miles, and it let me drive spiritual chi into the earth to condense Yang Wood across the land. That Yang Wood could devour the essence, energy, and spirit of living things, and even swallow raw spiritual chi, which made it monstrous. So long as my chi held out, it could blanket 10,000 miles of ground. A thoroughly domineering divine ability, and I liked it enormously. I turned back to the cultivation line on the panel, meaning to spend lifespan to reach the 9th level of the Void Realm. A full breakthrough would raise too wild a commotion, and I had only a little over 20,000 years of lifespan left. I first invested 1,000 years and climbed from the 1st level of the Void Realm all the way to the 4th, which was a fine bargain. Yet after I poured in another 1,000 years, my cultivation rose only to the 5th level. In the end, once I had tallied it up, I had spent 7,500 years to reach the 9th level of the Void Realm. With over 13,000 years still in hand, I chose to stop there. As the heaven and earth spiritual chi flooded into me, I began to feel out the mysteries within my body with care. I could not lean on lifespan forever, and I wished to build my own understanding of the road. The chi gathered upon my golden core, catalyzing more spiritual chi that nourished my tendons, bones, and primordial spirit, and my cultivation rose steadily. Even in the Void Realm, a cultivator's golden core still sat in the Dantian, and having crossed into that realm, I felt its weight more keenly than ever. It set me thinking of the golden core great Tao out of the old Taoist myths. Perhaps the golden core realm was only the laying of a foundation, and the true mysteries of the core had to be unfolded at a higher realm, much as spiritual roots did. I had always sensed that cultivating a single spiritual root would strike a wall at some stage. If immortals and gods were truly omnipotent, how could they wield the means of only one attribute? The primordial spirit was the same, being the manifestation of the soul, the thing that let a practitioner slip free of the body's shackles. In time, I wanted to try fusing the Yang Wood Primordial Chaos Cultivation technique with techniques of other attributes. My aim was to forge a 5 elements method that answered perfectly to my top grade 5 elements heavenly spiritual root. 2 hours later, I reached the 9th level of the Void Realm at last, having drained the heaven and earth spiritual chi for miles around, so that the outer sect would surely be roused again. That was no bad thing either. The Taehan sect would only grow more vigilant. The pressure on the demonic path spies would climb, and Jihyou's odds of surviving her tribulation would rise along with it. I sighed to myself that I might even be counted as having helped her. Sure enough, the next morning as I drilled the disciples, I saw great cultivators streaking past above the valley, The disciples were already murmuring about the spiritual chi that had sunk away the night before. The climb from the first level of the Void Realm to the ninth had drunk no less chi than the whole rise from soul transformation to the Void, and likely more. To face such a thing twice in a row had surely left the outer sect reeling. I meant to keep hoarding lifespan so the prospect of an investigation did not trouble me. Next would come the grand expansion of the Medicine Valley. The autumn wind blew bleak, and Mystic Valley kept to its cloistered life. Ever since the disaster of Chu Chanri, the disciples had thrown themselves harder into cultivation, and a month passed swiftly. One day I sat beneath a tree studying the Jami Array record, the white spirit rat dozing at my side, grown as sturdy as a fat dog. I read on while stroking it with my right hand, altogether comfortable until something plucked at my senses and I lifted my head toward the distance. It was the direction of the inner sect, and I could feel the mighty aura of the Void Realm. Great cultivators of the Void Realm were fighting. It seemed Ji Hyo Woo had at last formed her golden core, and the demonic path spies from every quarter could no longer restrain themselves and had thrown down against one another. I could not help but think of Gang Yeom, and I hoped she would not be reckless. At the first level of Nascent Soul, it would be desperately hard for her to wrest away that core. The inner sect lay far from the outer, so the Valley disciples felt nothing of the battle and carried on with their cultivation. Even at nightfall, I could still sense the distant fighting, which told me how fierce it had grown. Cold winds slid in through the window as I sat at the table reading, and footsteps came from beyond the door. Oh, Shin's voice asked whether he might enter, and I told him to come in. I quickly swapped the copy of The Travels of the Azure Wanderer in my hands for Zhang Hyundan's Records of 100 Herbs. He pushed the door open, closed it behind him, walked to the table and saw the records in my grip, and a quiet admiration lit his eyes, his resolve hardening further. He was thinking, no doubt, that his senior brother was so studious that he simply had to help him. I looked up and asked what brought him so late. He drew a deep breath and asked whether I had not been stuck at the 9th level of chi refining for quite a while now. I raised an eyebrow, wondering what he meant by it, and half suspected he had grown tired of being first disciple and had his eye on my seat as Valley Master. Then he went on to say that in truth he was a genius, but that he cultivated a divine ability which suppressed the growth of his realm. It was a method that gathered strength over long years and held the profound power of reforging one's fate. Actually, am I a genius? Hearing him say it, I nearly laughed aloud. I smiled and told him that in my eyes he had always been a genius, and asked whether he meant to pass his technique on to me. He nodded and explained that the genius he spoke of was only by comparison to the others in the valley, for set beside his elder brothers and sisters, his aptitude was thoroughly middling. The method he practiced was called the Tao evolution technique, taught to him by a divine monk. Once it was cultivated, he said, his realm would never advance, yet his cultivation would keep piling up, and he planned to unseal his realm only when his lifespan neared its end. At that moment, his spiritual root aptitude and his lifespan would all undergo a metamorphosis, though once unsealed the Tao evolution technique would lose its power for good. The account pricked my interest, and I asked, curious, what realm that divine monk held. He shook his head and admitted he did not know the man's cultivation, only that he styled himself the immortal-seeking Taoist. I asked why, if he was a Taoist, he should be called a divine monk at all. Oshin answered that the man had taken tonsure and wore a kasaya, so how could he be a Taoist, and that his own shaven look was modeled on the fellow's. The Taoist had declared that Oshin's future luck would be extraordinary and had forced the tonsure on him, and the scars left on his scalp were the reason no hair would grow there now. He looked thoroughly aggrieved as he said it, for he too wished to be handsome like me and admired by women. I did not chase the matter further, but asked him to explain the Tao evolution technique, wanting to see for myself just how profound it ran. He set about it in earnest, and the explaining stretched a full hour. The technique was indeed deep, the chi circulation alone maddeningly intricate, and seen through the lens of my own realm it held hidden mysteries besides. He asked with concern whether I had it, and offered to write the whole thing out for me the next day. I smiled and nodded, saying it did sound powerful, thanking him for his good heart, and telling him we should rest for the night. He waved off the thanks, said that with our bond such words were beneath us, and left downstairs beaming, thrilled to have at last helped his senior brother. The moment he was gone, I began cultivating the Tao evolution technique. Since he feared I would forget it, I fell in with his wishes so as not to expose my true aptitude and realm. In fact, so long as it was no special Tao technique, I could hold any text by heart after a single hearing. 3 days later, I was sparring swords with Sohan in the mountain forest. On the day Chu Chanri had thrown the valley into chaos, Sohan had stood at the front with his blade drawn. The sight had moved me, so I decided to give him a few pointers. He had held little hope for it, taking it for a board master's whim, and had not imagined the bout would run so far from what he expected. I held a wooden sword, my footwork plain and my strokes plainer still, yet I dismantled his every move with ease. The shock lifted my standing in his heart considerably, After a few dozen exchanges, I knocked his sword from his grip and it fell to the ground, and he stared at the wooden blade hovering at his throat, swallowing hard, gaping at me. I withdrew the sword, smiled, and asked how it had felt. He answered shamefacedly that I was so powerful, and I shook my head and told him I was not asking him to praise me but to say what he had sensed. He was stunned, then thought it over carefully, and something seemed to strike him, for his face changed and astonishment washed over it. He asked warily whether I had been using the strokes of the heaven-hating divine sword. I nodded and confirmed it, saying I had no deep grasp of that art, and asked whether he knew why I could still break his forms. He asked why. I told him it was because I was faster than he was. He began to protest, and I cut in by asking whether he had felt me to be slower than himself, while I dismantled his strokes with such ease. He admitted he had truly felt me to be slow, and started to say that it was only. I told him to think it through carefully. I had seemed slow because he had fixed his eyes on me, whereas my eyes stayed locked on his blade, so that before he swung I had already read the arc of his stroke. In the same instant that he swung, I swung as well, yet the distance my defending blade had to travel was far shorter than his. When our swords met, my lesser speed still caught up to him. He grasped it soon enough, for it was true that from the moment two swords rose, the outcome was already settled. He looked up at me full of admiration and said I was truly astonishing, to have read the manual only once and yet wield it better than he did. I stepped forward and smiled, telling him that I had once practiced the sword myself, so I understood it more deeply. Only he was to know this though, for I carried certain grudges and could not let it be known that I understood swordsmanship. The words moved him greatly, and he dropped to one knee, raised his hand, and swore that he would never spread word that his master knew the sword. If he did, he vowed, may he be struck by 5 thunderbolts and left alone for the rest of his life. I hurried to pull him up, asking why he needed to swear, since he had given his word and I believed him. Even so, I was well pleased with his bearing, for given my usual way of doing things, teaching him the sword at all had been a risk. He scratched his head and smiled in embarrassment. I went on guiding him. Though I had never practiced the heaven-hating divine sword with any diligence, my attainment in the grand azure startling divine sword was more than enough to offer him a few pointers. Half an hour later I left the forest, leaving Sohan to drill alone, and came to the mouth of the valley, where my gaze locked onto a wooden fence in the garden plots. A woman stood there, with the utility disciple Yang Min keeping her company. Gang Gyeong. In broad daylight she had dared walk straight into Mystic Valley. I grumbled inwardly, for I had felt her the moment she neared, which was why I had cut Sohan's training short. I had not moved to stop her earlier only because she had come flying openly on her sword, hiding neither her figure nor her aura. I strode over and told Yang Min to return to work, that I would see to the guest myself, and Yang Min left in relieved haste. Gang Young glanced back at me and smiled that my disciple was truly a bashful one. I said we should go upstairs to talk, and she raised no objection and followed me into the attic. Once inside, I shut the door and asked softly why she had come, and in the middle of the day no less. She sat herself down, waved her sleeves to fling out 4 talisman papers that stuck to the doors and windows, then lifted the teapot to pour for herself. She said carelessly that I had nothing to fear, since she was still an inner sect disciple of the Taeyeon sect, and before her grievous injury she had never exposed her identity. She had hidden herself only because she had enemies then, and after years of quiet inquiry she had learned they were all dead. I sat down across from her and asked whether those enemies had been people of the Taeyeon sect. She answered with a cryptic smile that, to be precise, like her, they had all been spies of the demonic path, and she leaned deliberately on those last words. I wanted to press further, but she waved me off, told me not to ask, and said she meant to stay in my medicine valley a while and would leave once the trouble blew over. I frowned and asked what had happened, for I could feel she had taken a severe internal injury and was only feigning composure. Her eyes grew complicated, and she said quietly that Ji Hyo Woo was truly no simple thing. Scarcely a breath after stepping into Golden Core, the girl had slipped an attack, and in the instant Gang Gyeong was distracted, a nascent soul cultivator of the Ji clan had wounded her badly. I tensed and asked whether she had really attacked the girl. She rolled her eyes and asked whether I had forgotten the demonic shadow divine ability she had taught me, since she had never shown her true body and I had no cause for fear. I breathed easier at that, then asked whether Ji Hyo Woo's innate Dao rune had been carried off. She shook her head and said no one had succeeded. Leaning on the Kirin step, Ji Hao had kept the nascent soul cultivators from closing. The soul transformation and stronger demonic figures had been walled off by the Ji clan and the Taeyeon sect together, whose elders were formidable indeed. A trace of lingering dread crossed her face at the memory. Relief loosened my chest to hear that Ji Hyo Woo had come through unharmed, for with neither of them dead, this was to my mind the best outcome. I looked at her, casting about for how to offer comfort. She looked up and asked with a smile whether I had tipped off the G clan. I shook my head quickly and swore it was impossible, that I was not that sort of man. She asked whether that was really so, and I insisted it was, and asked whether she wished me to swear it. So Han had only just sworn an oath to me, and now I was to swear one to Gang Gyeong. She looked at me and said with wonder that there was no need, and that in fact she had wanted me to tip off the G clan all along. I was startled and did not follow her meaning. She drank a cup of tea and explained with a smile that, seeing me stand at the gate of the G Manor, a passing notion had taken her. She had meant to use my mouth to warn the clan, so that once Ji Hyo-woo formed her core there would be a savage battle to exploit. What a pity, she sighed, pretending heartbreak that she had not guessed I was this kind of person, and that she had truly misjudged me. I said nothing, then she changed tack and smiled that it only proved I leaned toward her in my heart, and that I had not let her fondness go to waste. In future, she would treat me well, she said, since I had thoroughly won her heart. I told her not to talk nonsense. She only laughed behind her hand and said I had plainly been bound up by the rules of the righteous path, unable to take a joke, which left me feeling quite helpless. Then she touched the storage pouch at her waist and set a bronze piece on the table. It was square, its edges notched, its face crowded with dense, minute characters. Her eyes burned as she said this was the true purpose of her visit to the G Manor. It was the Divine Ability Dao Treasury of the G Clan, a record of one of the clan's 10 greatest divine abilities, a congratulatory gift from the G Clan chief to Ji Hyo-woo. It required the essence blood of the clan's direct bloodline to open, though anyone whose cultivation surpassed the soul transformation realm could force the restriction within. The G Clan had passed Ji Hyo-woo the Kirin step, and then this treasury, she noted, as if grooming her to join a holy land in years to come. My eyes could not help but fasten on the bronze piece, brimming with curiosity. She pushed it toward me and told me to hold it for now and hide it in the 8 Sceneries Grotto Heaven until she returned with the essence blood of the clan's direct line. During this stretch, she said, keeping it on herself would only invite calamity. I looked at the thing on the table and could not help but blink. I slid the bronze piece into my storage pouch. Then I asked whether the 10 great divine abilities of the G Clan were truly so formidable that even a genius of the Thousand Autumns Pavilion like her would covet them. She looked toward the wooden cabinet beside her and said softly that they were very strong, and not something one could simply master by wishing it. Within the G Clan, she told me, anyone who mastered even a single divine ability, whatever his standing, would be given focused cultivation and moved into the clan's main family. Within the Taechang dynasty, she went on, even all the sects combined could scarcely topple the Taeyeon sect, and the same held for the noble clans, where the gap was immense. 3 great noble houses stood above the imperial dynasty itself, and one of them was the G Clan. Her words made me suspect at once that the Thousand Autumns Pavilion kept a mole inside the G Clan too, just as one would expect of the demonic path. I followed the thread and asked who the other 2 houses were. She said Zhou and Go. I asked why not Li. She scoffed that the Li clan was merely a puppet, and the disdain in her voice gave me a fresh understanding of the Taechang dynasty. So the imperial family was not even the strongest noble house. It made a kind of sense, for though Li Heiondo's maximum lifespan was strong, it could not compare to Ji Hyo-woo's. She was the most terrifying aptitude I had yet encountered, and Go Jong was likely a member of the Go clan, his Void Realm cultivation proof enough of the house's foundation. As for the Ju clan, I had not yet crossed paths with them. Seizing the chance, I pressed Gang Young for more about the cultivation world, and she answered each question in turn. After about the burning of an incense stick, she lost her patience and glared. She demanded to know why I had so many questions, and told me to hurry and arrange a place for her to stay. It was the first time I had heard her speak of herself as this lady, so it seemed her wounds had grown unbearable. I took her downstairs and settled her lodging myself. Once checked in, she began cultivating to heal, and did not leave the room again. Gyeongjin came to me full of curiosity about the woman's identity, and I said only that she was an inner sect disciple, which was enough to leave Gyeongjin stunned. Word that an inner sect disciple had come to Mystic Valley raced through the whole valley, and every disciple soon knew, along with the rumor that she was very beautiful. In the dead of that night, I went down alone into the 8 Sceneries Grotto Heaven and buried the bronze piece in the soil. I meant to study the G Clan's divine ability treasury only once Gongyeong had gone. Autumn passed, and winter arrived, and white snow began drifting down from the sky. After recuperating in Mystic Valley for nearly a month, Gangyeong bade me farewell. I watched her leave on her sword, heading in a direction opposite the inner sect, so she was likely quitting the Taeyeon sect altogether. I glanced toward Gyeongjin's room, where I could feel her cultivating some strange method Gangyeong had taught her. Before departing, Gangyeong had explained that it was Gyeongjin who had insisted on pestering her for it. I watched a while, then walked into the forest to check on the Yao sheep roaming there. The demonic path had surely dispersed, and from here it was time to return to the quiet life of farming. I would not grow complacent over my 9th level Void Realm cultivation, for I felt it was not nearly enough. Already I found myself looking forward to whatever functions might unlock at 1,000,000 years of lifespan, hoping for something mighty. In the days that followed, I would slip out of the valley now and then to tend the immortal caves of the Outer Sect disciples. While I was about it, I would visit the Outer Sect to buy seeds for high-grade medicinal herbs. The winter snow fell heavier and heavier until the whole world sank into a vast expanse of white. One night I came quietly into the 8 Sceneries Grotto Heaven, dug the bronze piece from the soil, then carried it beneath the azure vine tree and sat down to meditate. The sky dragon came over and began rubbing against me, and I suddenly noticed that its figure had started to broaden, which was no good sign. I began scolding it not to be so gluttonous, for I had no wish to raise a fat dragon. After playing with the sky dragon a while, I at last set my divine sense against the bronze piece. Gang Gyung had not lied, for the thing held a powerful restriction that no one below the Void Realm could force. My 9th level Void Realm divine sense drove into it, and the mysterious restriction held for only a moment. Once it shattered, a vast tide of memory surged into my mind, complex and tangled, sundry fragments of knowledge forcing their way in until my brow creased. So even after breaking the restriction, I still had to sort the flood myself, which was perhaps another form of trial. My divine sense was strong enough to catch the faint connections between the pieces, and after a while I had it all in order. This divine ability was called Heaven and Earth Dao Gong. The winter snow lay heavy, far deeper this year than in any before, and I had to lead the disciples out to shovel it. Unless the need was urgent, we used no spiritual power, since in my telling this, too could pass for a form of cultivation. The flying snow came down like a hard rain and fell a full half-day before it finally slackened. I stood before the wooden fence, looking over the herbs I had planted, and not a single one had come to harm, which drew a smile from me. After watching a while, my gaze drifted to the mouth of the valley. There I saw a man in a rain hat and straw raincoat walking over, a long spear wrapped in cloth slung across his back. My probe read him as Na Han, Golden Core, 8th level, 66 years lived, 400 of lifespan in hand, a ceiling of 2,803, a maximum span of 2,800 years. No ordinary man. I went over at once, made my way to Na Han, and cupped my hands in salute. Before I could get out a question, he asked first who the Valley Master Goan might be. His voice sounded young, yet it brimmed with vigor. I said that I was, and asked who he was. He lifted his head, revealing a handsome face beneath the rain hat, though a brand was seared into his left cheek, carved with the character for prisoner. He said expressionless that His Majesty had sent him, that I had 1 hour to prepare, and that then I would come with him. With that, he brushed past me and walked on into the valley. A flash of joy went through my eyes at the words. It had finally come. I wanted to see just how large the Medicine Valley Li Heondo had ready for me. I went straight off to find O Shin, who had become the head disciple of Mystic Valley and could manage the whole of it. The title of head disciple was a post, and not necessarily the personal disciple of the Valley Master. The head disciple of the Taehun sect, much the same, held the greatest strength, yet was not the sect leader's own student. Hearing that I would be away a while, O Shin was thoroughly excited. I could not help but pile on a few extra reminders. Above all, that he must leave the herbs for me to harvest with my own hands upon my return. He knew his senior brother had few pleasures, and that harvesting was one of them, so he guaranteed he would never reap them without my leave. Na Han had come to Yeon's side, where the boy was wielding a long staff, drilling his family's staff technique. Seeing Na Han approach, Yeon stopped short and watched him nervously. Na Han drew a secret manual from his robes and tossed it over, saying that the boy's root bone was not bad and that he could practice this. Yeon caught it and answered that he had only mixed spiritual roots. Na Han told him that spiritual roots defined only the aptitude for absorbing chi and cultivating, and that a person's aptitude had other facets besides. The boy's root bone was quite good, stronger than most, and made fine material for the spear. Once he mastered it, he could go to Changju to join the army, build merit, then trade for a heaven and earth treasure to cleanse his marrow and change his destiny. The words lit Yeon up, and he thanked him at once. Na Han nodded slightly and wandered on, roaming the valley and studying the herbs planted throughout. About the burning of an incense stick later, I found him and said we could go. He reached behind his back and drew the long spear, and a golden glittering weapon dropped into his hand, drawing the eyes of every disciple in the valley upward. Show off. I muttered it to myself. He leapt into the air, planted his feet on the spear in midair, glanced down at me on the snowy ground, and told me to come up. I sprang up at once, landed behind him, and set my feet on the shaft. He urged his spiritual power, and the spear bore us off at speed, vaulting the mountaintops and carving a long line across the vast snowbound sky. The disciples gathered below to gossip about who he might be. The high air was bitterly cold, and my black hair streamed backward, bearing a fair and comely face. Nahan's voice sounded, his back still to me, and it carried a hint of praise, saying my control of spiritual power was very precise, and that I stood remarkably steady. I answered offhandedly that I favored the sword kinesis technique in daily life and so had studied it. He said that although my cultivation was very low, to be prized by His Majesty I must possess extraordinary qualities. Once we reached the valley I could do as I pleased, he added, for he would guard its safety. Then he began to speak of the place, and I listened closely. By his telling, the valley meant a great deal to His Majesty, who would cultivate a company of geniuses there for future use. If I performed well, I might receive a share of precious herbs besides. I could feel that Nahan honored Lee Haeondo from the bottom of his heart, which stirred my interest in the character for prisoner branded on his face. Lee Haeondo's medicine valley was called Shione Valley, and though it sat near the Taeon sect, it lay thousands of miles from Mystic Valley, set within a vast mountain range where Yao beasts ran wild. I proposed raising a teleportation formation within Shione Valley to link it to my own. Nahan rejected the idea, saying the very existence of the valley could not be known to the Taehan sect. That made me want to grumble aloud. He had planted it right beside the Taehan sect, and still wished to keep it hidden. Then again, I thought of the 8 sceneries Grotto Heaven, and it struck me that Lee Haeondo had perhaps laid down a high-grade formation of his own. To spare me, Nahan kept his flight unhurried, so that we were still aloft after nightfall. I sensed the forested mountains here were thick with demonic chi, and that some of the Yao beasts were no weaker than golden core cultivators. Just as I expected, a third-tier Yao bird pounced from behind, and Nahan threw a punch. His spiritual power condensed into a golden spear shadow that tore the bird to shreds, and he plucked its Yao core casually into his hand. After that strike, no more Yao beasts dared come to bar our way. It was not until the next morning that I finally laid eyes on Shione Valley. The land and mountains ahead lay swathed in boundless white snow and mist. Among the peaks turned a vortex of driving snow, and under the sunlight white cranes wheeled within it, lovely as some immortal realm. My gaze pierced the snow and haze to reach Shione Valley, and my expression turned strange. It sat among the mountains, and in sheer territory it was indeed twice the size of Mystic Valley. Stone steles rose upon the surrounding slopes, plainly a formation of some kind, though it had not yet been woken. What killed me was that the whole valley lay choked with weeds, so raw and untended it was, that I would have to clear the land before anything else. I could not help but ask whether it was only the two of us in Shione Valley for now. Nahan looked ahead and began letting the long spear descend. He replied that I need not worry, for he would go catch a few Yao beasts nearby to help me. The valley could not recruit people carelessly, and we would have to wait for His Majesty to send them. Catching monsters, I echo, and my interest kindles at once. As we drop lower, Shione Valley shows itself through the snowy mist, and from the air it looks for all the world like a vast green sea. Small streams run down from the mountains all around into the valley, and 2 little rivers at its rim, seen close, slip underground at their ends. Before long, Nahan sets us down and falls to wrapping his long spear in cloth once more. From this day you are the master of this valley, Nahan tells me, and I may do as I please and call on him at any hour. I nod, draw the heavenly constellation sword, and bid him raise a few pavilions along the edge while I clear the weeds. His eyes fall on the scabbard of the heavenly constellation sword, and his pupils blow wide, and he drops to his knees at once. In a deep voice he says the subordinate Nahan pays his respects to the master of the heavenly constellation sword. I drew the sword on purpose, fearing Nahan would not take me seriously enough, and the effect is fine indeed. What are you doing? Get up quickly, I say, feigning alarm as I hurry to raise him. On his feet again, his face gone complicated, he murmurs that he never thought His Majesty would give the heavenly constellation sword to me. Why so great a reaction, I ask in surprise. Taechang has 3 great imperial swords, Nahan tells me, and to see the sword is to see the emperor. They are the heaven-questioning sword, the heavenly constellation sword, and the heaven-punishing sword. And His Majesty bears the heaven-punishing sword, while His Highness the Crown Prince bears the heaven-questioning. Without His Majesty's leave, no man may hold these swords, so to see one is to see the Emperor himself. Hearing it, I feel of a sudden that Li Ah stands very high in Lee Haeondo's heart, on a level even with the Crown Prince. Without Lee Haeondo's consent, Li Ah could hardly have inherited the heavenly constellation sword, yet now that the sword has fallen to me, I wonder whether the Emperor keeps some hidden design. I am used to weighing the worst, so I sense his intentions run deeper than they seem, since the heart of an emperor is as deep as the sea. I see, I tell Nahan. Let us set to work then, and he raises no objection, though his gaze cannot help lingering on the sword a few times more. When he sees me weeding with the heavenly constellation sword, he is left speechless, and after a struggle he finally turns away. Half an hour on, the formation steles around Shione Valley wake, each erupting with blue light that shoots skyward and joins high above into a half-round barrier over the whole valley. Then it turns clear as glass. With the formation raised, Na Han falls to building the pavilions, and by noon I have cleared every weed from the valley floor. My work goes fast, and had I not wished to hide my true strength, I could have swept the weeds away with a single stamp of my foot. 3 days on, I have finished the sowing, since Na Han brought a wealth of high-grade herb seeds, his storage pouch seeming bottomless. In those 3 days, Na Han raises 5 pavilions and catches 3 monkey Yao beasts, all of the second order, able to walk upright and, but for the fur on them, hardly different from men. He asks me to name them, and I dub them Son Il, Son I, and Son Sam by their cultivation, which leaves them silent a long while. The 3 monkeys, as it happens, are quite taken with the surname Sun. I lead the 3 of them about the grounds to lay out their daily tasks. The 3 monkeys already have the human tongue and are clever enough, so speaking with them is easy. I do not fear their acting up, since Na Han has cursed them and their lives are not their own. Off to one side, Na Han lies down on a pavilion steps and draws a book from his robe, plainly investiture of the gods, for he too is an admirer of it. When I chatted with him of it before, the man grew quite excited, nothing like his usual cold and distant self. Near evening I find Na Han and say I mean to return to the Medicine Valley. Though he fears some harm on the road, thick as it is with monsters, I hold to going and promise to take care. He thinks a moment, then hands me 10 talismans, telling me they are invisibility talismans. Spiritual power poured in will hide even my aura, and unless I meet a third order or golden core being, none will easily find me. Each lasts only 5 hours though, so I must spend them sparingly. I take the talismans and cup my hands in thanks. Still uneasy, he asks why I do not reach Foundation Establishment first, since he has Foundation Establishment pills at hand. I shake my head and tell him I have my own Foundation Establishment pills, so he need not worry that I have the way here by heart and carry plenty of spiritual chi pills besides. With that I fly off on my sword, for leaving Chane Valley is no trouble to the formation, though entering it is hard. Na Han watches my back a while, his brows drawing together, and thinking of His Majesty's words, he can only sigh. Li Hyondo charged him that should I die, another would be set in my place as Valley Master, and his own errand is only to guard Chione Valley. 100 miles out from Chione Valley I put on speed, and before nightfall I am back at the Medicine Valley. With Chione Valley in my keeping, my days will run busy, the outer sect caves waiting on me in Chione Valley to be looked in on now and then. I will not wholly trust the monkeys. Tiring though it is, I feel no weariness at all, only a rising fighting spirit, since in a few years, my lifespan will soar. Once I hold the Medicine Valley Gojong promised me, a lifespan of 1,000,000 years will not seem so far off. I even weigh taking up the art of puppets, to leave one in each Medicine Valley to help me watch the herbs. Before that, though, I must lift my surface cultivation, for the 9th level of the Chi refining realm will not do. The road between the Medicine Valley and Chione Valley alone would prove a trial. Just like that, 15 days pass, and I go to the outer sect to call on Elder Yu Chang of the Scripture Hall. I feel Yu Chang holds more power than Ju Qiangno of the Alchemy Hall. The 2 of us meet alone in the inner room, where Yu Chang leafs through the newest volume of Investiture of the Gods. It is written so grippingly, he smiles, that a mere flip-through makes his heart itch. Elder Yu, I say, hesitant, I have a request, and without lifting his eyes he asks what it is. I am readying for Foundation Establishment, I tell him, yet I would not be an outer sect disciple, but stay on as Master of the Medicine Valley. It suits my writing, I say, and I fear dying outside on some mission. Just that, he asks, and I ask whether the Elder can manage it. Of course he laughs, looking every inch the old fox. He will go straight to Go Yu, he says, who told him before that his father prizes me highly, and bade him take what care of me he could. I thank him at once. You are already a special talent of the Taehyun sect, he tells me, your yearly harvest among the top 3 of the outer sect's medicine valleys. Your investiture of the gods, he adds, has swelled the sect's yearly intake of disciples by half. Your service, he says, has long outrun any outer sect disciples' missions, so even should I reach the Golden Core one day, I will never be sent out to them. He laughs at his own words after, for he cannot reach the Golden Core himself, so how could I? It eases me greatly, since it is a simple thing to manage, and I need only not behave like a genius, lifting my surface realm slowly to make my future doings the easier. Then Yu Chang seems to think of something and says that lately Ju Dong Yu, a genius of the Gilson sect, is coming to the Taehyun sect to challenge cultivators under 100 years. It should be lively, he says, and I might gather matter for my next book. He reminds me I must write the Taehyun sect into it, for investiture of the gods is near its end, and word has come down to him from above. Is this Ju Dong Yu so mighty? I ask, curious. And Yu Chang marvels that he is indeed. Born with dual spiritual roots, he tells me his physique, the evil-suppressing golden body the Ju family bred over 1,000 years. Ju Dong Yu has never met his match in his own realm. He once slew a cultivator of the 3rd level of the Golden Core realm while standing at the 9th of Foundation establishment, a thing that shook the cultivation world. Men name him the mightiest genius the Taichang world has seen in 100 years. I listen close as Yu Chang, full of wonder, falls to recounting that battle. A genius who can kill across a realm is, to my mind, a protagonist blessed with luck. I could never do the like, or rather, I would never dare it. Against killing up across a realm, I would far sooner crush a weaker foe with the weight of a greater cultivation. Half an hour on, I leave the scripture hall, buy a batch of goods in the city, and hurry back to the Medicine Valley. The next morning, I gather the disciples for their drills and tell them I broke through to Foundation establishment in the night, which startles them all. Oh, Sin is startled too, yet a little sorry with it. If his senior brother has reached Foundation establishment, he will surely go to the outer sect, and Oh Sin will become the Valley Master. Master, are you leaving us then? Jin Gom asks quickly, her voice full of regret, a pitiful look drawn on her face. The others watch me nervously too, while Oh Sin masters his surprise and feigns a look of disappointment. Yes, I sigh, and the disciples' faces darken on the instant, Oh Sin's heart hammering out of all control. Saddest of them is So Qian, who is about to become the oldest soul in the valley. But because our Medicine Valley yields so well, I go on quickly. I ask the outer sect to let me stay, and they have agreed. The disciples stand stunned a breath, then cheer and rush at me, while Oh Sin, stunned as well, takes a few breaths before he can squeeze out a smile. Gladdest of all is So Qian, who knows he has no hope of Foundation establishment in this life. If I stay at his side the whole of it, he is glad, since only I will indulge his love of raising monsters. The Medicine Valley falls into high spirits, and it takes Oh Sin a long while to calm himself. Seeing his mood, I draw him aside and tell him he will soon have a Medicine Valley of his own. Even were I to stay, I add, the Medicine Valley might be left in his hands. In the years to come, Oh Sin will hold the true power of the Valley Master, which leaves him greatly excited. Watching his eager smile, I think again of Zhang Hyundan and Zhang Chunchu, for things have changed and the people are no longer the same. The days run quickly by, and I leave the valley every second day to tend the outer set caves, and go to Qian'e Valley once a half month. Learning I have reached Foundation establishment, Nahan is wholly at ease and troubles me no more. Seeing that he loves to read, I bring him the travels of Chomha. Yet oddly, on my later visits to Chon'e Valley, I never see Nahan holding it. I wonder whether he did not care for it, and why he no longer reads Investiture of the Gods either. Winter passes and spring comes, and the new year draws near once more. The Medicine Valley readies for the spring festival, and I walk the gardens holding the white spirit rat, which lies with its eyes shut, intent in my arms as though asleep. A whistle of split air comes from the horizon, and I turn my head, a smile rising on my face. Yop Ran has come back. She lands lightly beside me, stows her flying sword, and asks with a sweet smile whether her senior brother come home for the festival would truly turn her away. Is the law enforcement hall not busy? I ask her, smiling. Busy or not, she says, she can always spare a few days, since proper rest serves cultivation, a thing I once told her and she has never forgotten. After a few pleasantries, she pulls me toward the pavilion, saying she has a treasure to show me. A treasure. I set the white spirit rat down and follow her up. Inside the room, she leaves the door open, which eases me. She draws a brocade box from her storage pouch and smiles in triumph that it is a Foundation establishment gift she made ready just for me. Why go to such trouble, I say, when I gave you no gift at your own Foundation establishment? Without your Foundation establishment pill, she laughs. Could she ever have broken through? No genius able to force it on her own route. At that, I stop refusing and step to her side to look. She opens the box, and inside lies a plant root, like the beard roots of ginseng. Its spiritual chi so faint it is hard to feel unless one reaches for it. I send a probe over it and read a human face tree in a revival state, its lifespan nothing yet against a ceiling of 22,000 years. A ceiling of 22,000 years, and my brows lift, for it is the first time I have seen those words, a revival state. It is the root of a tier 6 spirit tree, Yoap Ran tells me, one that will grow again after a few years in the soil and thicken the spiritual chi of a place. Where did so precious a thing come from, I ask. She caught a demonic path spy a while back, she says, and took this from 1,000 Autumn's Pavilion agent's cave, and never turned it in. Is that not a risk, I ask? Do not fret, she says, for other law enforcement disciples keep things too, and the higher-ups let it pass so long as the greed stays small, and no one else knows of this one. The words ease me, and I tell her that if she ever wants for herbs, she need only say, since I will soon hold a second Medicine Valley and we can aid each other. She smiles and goes off to find the others, having brought them gifts as well. I look at the brocade box and turn over where to plant it. In the end, I decide to save it for the third Medicine Valley. Since the new ground will need its spiritual chi thickened, the richer the chi, the faster the herbs grow. The Medicine Valley already keeps its own rhythm and wants no spirit tree, and Chiene Valley needs no seeds from me, since it is Li Hyundo's and I hold only the managing of it. I stow the box, take up brush and ink at the desk, and set to writing. Yopran's coming warms the mood of the Medicine Valley all the more. Night falls, the festival games begin, and after we have all sat down to drink, Jinguam begs Yopran for tales of an outer sect disciple's missions, and Yopran does not refuse. The mission she tells of was an evil cleansing one, she says, in a mountain town where near 1,000 households had all died within a few days. To spare the common folk, the town called on the Taehan sect. She tells it vividly, and in the dark of night the disciples listen on edge, the girls huddling together. Their hearts are in their throats at every ghost and monster. Even so, Chan and Oh-sin and Su-han gone tense, watching the little girl who once trailed at my heels now stand on her own. I cannot keep the smile from my face. It is deep in the night before the disciples scatter. Yopran follows me back to the pavilion, and I take out a secret manual I have made and hand it to her. It is a leg technique manual I got from the inner sect, I say, and she may practice it when she has time. The whirlwind shadowless kick. She takes it without opening it, tucks it away, and tells me to take care should I ever meet Yuk Gugap. What is wrong with him? I asked, puzzled. She sighs that we spoke of this before, of the strife within the Taehyun sect, the elders against the sect leader quietly gathering disciples to them. Yuk Gugap has taken an elder of the outer sect elder hall for his master, she says, and that elder serves the sect leader's rival. In time a great chaos will break inside the Taehan sect, and if the sect leader wins he will purge the rebel disciples, and Yuk Gugap will not slip free. She tried to warn him, she says, but he would not hear it, holding that cultivation asks for struggle, that better to gamble than to live a grey life. His choice is not wrong, she says. She only fears that if I draw too close to him I will be dragged down later, which he likely thinks too, and why he has not come back to the Medicine Valley. I fall silent at that. I cannot meddle in Yuk Gugap's choice, for he is right, that cultivation asks for struggle. The reason I do not struggle is that I can seize lifespan, so I have no standing to school another on how to cultivate. Yopran turns to other matters, all of the outer sect, and I learn that the Taehan sect strife reaches even the Gi clan and the royal descendants, which I hear out with keen interest. Not until dawn do I see her off, the two of us talking the night through yet still in high spirits. Before she goes, I remind her not to forget the whirlwind shadowless kick, and she nods, a flicker of grievance in her eyes. The blazing summer comes, and at 35 years I stand by the window watching the sky, my brows drawn, waiting on Go Yu. The half year is past, so why has he not come? Every day I have looked to my third Medicine Valley, the seeds long since made ready, only waiting to be sown. Has some harm come to him? Last month at the outer sect I felt the air of the place gone wrong. More black-robed disciples in the city. They belong, it is said, to a new department the fresh outer sect Grand Elder has raised. The Demon Extermination Hall. The Demon Extermination Hall answers straight to the Grand Elder. Its disciples no lower than the 5th level of Foundation establishment. Their keep finer than any other departments. The Taehan sect holds 8 outer sect cities, and if the outer sect runs so, then the inner sect and the main city are worse, and such strife is bound to touch Gojong. It is all too annoying, and it is spoiling my planting, so that I half wish to punch the troublemakers. Just then, I feel it, and the smile breaks across my gloomy face. He is here. I catch Go-Yu's aura and press my own feelings down, and do not go down to meet him. After a long while, Go-Yu lands at last in the Medicine Valley and calls my name aloud, which draws every disciple's eye. I open the door and tell Brother Go to come up and talk. He stows the compass in his hand and climbs the stairs, and once inside I shut the door and pour him tea, while he browses the shelves as though searching for something. I have not yet written the last volume of Investiture of the Gods, I tell him, and at that he sags with disappointment. He turns, sits at the table, draws book after book from his storage pouch, and last of all a token. This is your Valley Master token, he says. Your Medicine Valley set between the outer sect and the inner. It is less than 100 miles from the outer sect city. No hard trip for a man at Foundation establishment. The books are his father's life set down, he tells me, for me to draw upon. His father says I need not hold to the facts, but may shape them freely, or even build a whole tale upon them. When he finishes, his look turns playful, his eyes hinting at me. I set the teacup before him and take up the Valley Master token. Unlike the Medicine Valley's bronze token, this one is silver white, layered with restrictions within. I will take you there shortly, he says, and if I lose the way, I need only send my divine sense into the token and it will guide me. I nod. for I can hardly wait to see the new Medicine Valley. Then Go Yu seems to recall something and says that when I write of him, I must put Ju Dongyu in as well. He is to be cast as the mightiest genius of the younger age, who yet admires him above all and follows his lead. My face twitches, and I say that would hardly do, that writing it so would only bring me trouble. Whatever I want, he says, I need only ask and he will grant it. This is no matter of price, I answer. 100 high-grade spirit stones he offers. If Ju Dongyu reads it, he will surely look into me, I say. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones, he cries, and that is the whole of his wealth. Would a homophone do, I ask, and Go Yu raises a brow and allows it, so long as I change but a single character. Done. I agree, though I will not slander Ju Dongyu in the book, but think instead to make the two of them brothers who love and war by turns, and so offend neither side. I can tell Go Yu bears Ju Dongyu no malice, or he would not take him for a little brother but shame him in the tale outright. He is only jealous of Ju Dongyu, I judge, and if he could be made Ju Dongyu's brother with a little heartfelt drama besides, Go Yu should be well content. After resting half an hour, the two of us set off at once, leaving the Medicine Valley on our swords. Evening, the sun sinking below the rim. I stand on the cliff and look down on the Medicine Valley ahead, well pleased. Several low mountains rise before me, and among them lies a broad valley over 10 miles long and 2 or 3 across. Rows of trees line the valley's edges like a natural wall, sheltering it from wind and weather. There are immortal caves of intersect disciples nearby, Go Yu tells me, and more than one. So long as I stray no farther than 100 miles, I will meet no Yao beast. I nod, my eyes full of longing, though what I see is no valley but an endless river of lifespan numbers. Go Yu pats my shoulder and departs on his flying sword, and I leap toward the valley, wind waves visible about my limbs, the wind manipulation technique at work. Go Yu, riding his sword, glances back with a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but does not turn. I land and walk first to the valley mouth, where a bare stone tablet stands, no character carved on it. With a finger for a sword, I cut 4 characters in sword chi. Third Medicine Valley. The name is plain because more Medicine Valleys will come in time. I am well pleased with my hand, for I practice calligraphy often for my writing, and the strokes now carry an edge and a sharp spirit. After admiring it a while, I set to finding a spot for a pavilion, meaning to raise the teleportation formation first. Dusk fades, and the curtain of night comes down. By the bonfire, I sit on a rock and leaf through a book Yisoyu gave me, which sets down how to raise the teleportation formation she provided. Cultivation in this world runs strong indeed, for reading it is like reading a manual, and a simplified one at that. Her formation already has its restrictions set, so I need only build it in the book's order. I need to sit up the whole night at it, and once it stands I will bring a few disciples to sow the seeds. Waking the formation costs spirit stones, and I am wealthy now. Between my investiture income and the 1,000 high-grade spirit stones Go Yu just gave me, I have enough to squander a long while. In one night I finished the teleportation platform and set off on my sword. Back at the Medicine Valley, I raise a matching platform beside my pavilion, my doings drawing every disciple to watch. So Cheon asks what I am about, and I hide nothing. Hearing I am to take a second Medicine Valley and raise a teleportation formation, the disciples catch fire and press me with questions, and I answer as I build. Not until noon is it done, and under their eyes I set spirit stones into the grooves of the formation pillars and feed spiritual power into the trigger. The platform quakes, the 2 pillars burst with light, and it gathers into a curtain. O Sin, I say, go to the outer sect and recruit 3 utility disciples. Su Han, Jin Gum, and Yeon come with me, and the rest stay to guard the Medicine Valley. At my word, the 3 step forward, Jin Gum among them, and follow me into the formation, and before long the light fades and the platform stills. In the third Medicine Valley, I set the 3 to weeding while I raise the houses. Su Han weeds with his sword, Yeon with his spear, Jin Gum with her legs. Ever since Na Han taught Yeon a set of spear forms, the boy begged me for an iron spear. I bought him one at the outer sect, no common shaft but the meanest grade of magical artifact, able to bear spiritual power. I have no taste for the spear, so I never watch Yeon's forms, yet since he took it up his strength climbs by the day. The first true genius I have seen in my valley. His cultivation still crawls, but his fighting power soars. After half a year of the spear, Dang Yu and Su Han together are no match for him, which stings the 2 of them hard. It sets me thinking of my own comprehension, the one thing lifespan cannot raise. In this world, it seems, root aptitude does not decide all. I called Su Han, Jin Gum, and Yeon here to school them, for in the disaster of Chucholi the 3 won my favor. I mean to cultivate them well and carry them further. The third medicine valley sits between the inner and outer sect, its spiritual chi richer, which aids their cultivation, and now and then I can give them a pointer. All three are willing to bear hardship, resting only when the weeding is done, and even racing one another in secret to be first. By the time they finish, I have raised 4 pavilions. The 4 of us gather before the buildings to rest, Su-han eyeing Ye-yun with a trace of defiance. Ye-yun sits far calmer, grown more reserved since he took up the spear. Master, Jin-gum asks, wiping her sweat. This place is so big, is it enough for only the 3 of us? Enough and to spare, I laugh, for I once ran the Medicine Valley alone while your senior uncles Mangrang and Li-ah idled the days away. Looking back on those small quarrels, I find them only fond, though it saddens me the old friends are gone. At that, Jin-gum asks after my past, and Su-han and Ye-yun listen close too, for they hold me in deep respect. Though Na-han taught Ye-yun his spear and not I, the boy still counts it his master's grace. But for me, no mysterious cultivator would have come to the valley to gift him the forms. After half an hour of talk, we go back to the work. 3 days on, the third medicine valley is sown, though it looks a wasteland still, for seeds need time to sprout and grow. I take them back to the medicine valley to pack, then let them move to the third medicine valley to live. At this, the remaining utility disciples grow curious, and some would go too, but O-Sin holds them back. As master of the medicine valley, he cannot let his people run off, since the valley is his foundation. And so my 3 medicine valleys begin to run, and a fine farming life unfolds. A month passes from the sowing of the third medicine valley, and Jin Gayam and the other 2 guard it while I look in only now and then. They need only a little time each day to walk the gardens, the rest given to cultivation. Jin Gom's cultivation has climbed far past what it was, on the strength of Gong Yang's technique, and Ye-yun drills his spear on the hillside without cease. Sweat falls from him like rain, and his whole body aches, yet he will not stop, for these forms are his one chance, and he will not stay a utility disciple all his life. I know the boy's heart in this, and I let him be. At noon one day I come to the third medicine valley by the teleportation formation, sweep the gardens with my divine sense, and find nothing amiss. Then my eye is drawn to Ye-yen at the spear by the valley mouth, and as I walk over he turns a little and sets his back to me. Yon, why are you hurt? I ask, coming up, and he hesitates, then turns to face me. His face is bruised purple, a slap mark plain on his left cheek. He tells me what befell him the evening before, and fury rises in me at once, that someone would dare bully my disciple. What is his name, I ask, and will he come again? He does not know, the boy says, for the man gave no name, only said he would find the time to come again once his business was done. Do not fear, I tell him, patting his shoulder. Your master will stand behind you, and I take out healing pills for him. For some days I stay in the third medicine valley, but the one who beat Ye-yun does not show. Yet after I go to the outer sect to tend my cave and return, I find Ye-yun beaten again, the man striking and leaving each time. So it runs, and over the next 2 months Ye-yun is beaten 4 times, and never once am I there. I begin to suspect the man is dodging me on purpose. At noon this day I read beneath a tree above the hillside, where I can see Ye-yun at the spear. Then I feel something and raise a brow, thinking at last that he has come. A figure flies over and lands before Ye-yun, and at the sight of him the boy tenses and even backs 2 steps. My probe reads Judong-yu, 9th level of the Golden Core realm, 62 years old, lifespan 900 against a ceiling of 3,100. It is him, then. I never thought to meet Judong-yu here, the man lately made famous across the Taehan sect. Judong-yu has been challenging the young of every quarter and never once losing. His name run even to the outer sect. His Gyeolsan sect is a proud righteous house on good terms with the Taehan sect, so the great cultivators here can hardly move against him, and he has run wild half a year unchecked. He only duels and never kills, and swears aloud to challenge none past 100 years, being himself 38 short of 100, to challenge a Taehan disciple of 99 as a handicap he grants them, and still not one can beat him. His gaze slides to me on the hillside, his eyes calm, while I tuck my book away, rise, and walk down. I come to stand between Judong-yu and Ye-yun, turn to face him, and cup my hands. I am Ye-yun's master, Go-an, I say, and ask how my disciple has offended the senior. Ye-yun is moved to see me stand before him, for I told him these are all intersect disciples, which means golden core cultivation. That I, at the first level of foundation establishment, would face a golden core cultivator for his sake stirs the boy deeply. So you are his master, Judong-yu says, his brow knitting. Your cultivation disappoints me. My disciple is only a chi refining, I answer. So how high could his master be? I am not bullying your disciple, he scoffs. I am showing him respect. And at that Ye-yun's face goes green, his mouth opening on nothing. If you wish to guide him, I say, you might have said so plainly and my disciple would have thanked you for the favor. But you did not say it, and your strikes fell heavy. Perhaps you truly meant to guide him, yet in your heart you surely held him in scorn, which is why you could not be troubled to explain. Were Ju Dongyu the Taehun sect's first genius, I might have weighed my words. But he is not. I have no wish to provoke him for nothing, yet if he bullies his way to my door, I will not be soft. His brow draws tighter, for he longs to answer back and yet knows I have read him true. He did hold Yeon in some scorn, and came to guide him only on a whim. So you have come to hold me to account, he says at last. Then let the rules stand. No chi, only moves. If you can beat me, he says, I will apologize to your disciple and gift him a whole body refining manual. Master, let it go, Yeon says quickly, knowing best how unfathomable Ju Dongyu's moves are. Only moves, I ask, and he says that is right, a smile crossing his face that looks half sinister. If you lose, I tell him, you will tell no one you were beaten, and you will pester us master and disciple no more. He laughs that all shall be as I wish, and bids me quickly take up a weapon. I raise my right hand, draw a branch from the forest with a gesture, and grip it like a sword, beckoning him on with my left. Ju Dongyu comes at me, and as the gap closes, Yeon hurries aside for fear of hindering me. At less than 7 paces, Ju Dongyu bursts forward, before me in a single step, and drives his right fist at my belly. Even without chi, the punch carries the roar of tiger and leopard, and its fierce force bears down on me before the fist can land. Then his fist halts, his pupils shaking, his face all astonishment. Yeon's eyes go wide. Unable to believe it, I have leaned a little back, the branch in my hand laid against Ju Dongyu's throat, while his fist hangs yet 2 feet from me. Were this a sword, I ask, my face calm. I wonder whether it would have hurt you. Ju Dongyu's face runs through a dozen colors, and after a few breaths he draws back his fist, and after a few breaths he draws back his fist, and I my branch. He takes a deep breath, looks to Yeon, and says his apology, that he went too far, and tosses a manual from his storage pouch to the boy before turning back to me. Your sword is so fast, he says. Who exactly are you? I fling the branch into the forest and answer that I am only a cultivator of middling root, who dislikes drawing chi and loves to drill sword moves at leisure. My moves are not fine, I tell him, only fast enough, and were the rules lifted I would be no match for him at all. Had Ju Dongyu gone back on his word, I would have made him regret it, but he kept it and could bow to a utility disciple, which shifts my view of him. The man may be arrogant, yet his nature is not bad. His face works as he grinds out whether I will truly tell no one of this day, and I counter that I do not even know his name, so how could I tell? He breathes easier, salutes me, and departs faster than he came, while Ye Yen comes over glowing that he never dreamed my sword so fast, that I felled the man in a single move. I glance to the valley, where Jin Gum draws chi in the house, and Su Han drills his sword 10 miles off in the forest, neither of them having marked the spar. Speak of this to no one. I tell Ye Yan, let it be a secret between master and disciple, and say nothing to your senior brother or sister. He nods, glowing, feeling nearer to me. Teaching Ju Dongyu his lesson is only a small matter to me, and afterward I can go out with an easy mind, no longer needing to guard the Third Medicine Valley. Yet a month on, I come back to the Third Medicine Valley to find Ju Dongyu at the valley mouth. Yeon at his spear and Ju Dongyu looking on. Feeling my gaze, he beams and waves at me, and a flash of displeasure crosses my eyes as I go over. Why have you come again? I ask, frowning, and wonder whether the man means to freeload on the Taeon sect. He says, all eagerness, that he has worked out how to break my sword moves, and would spar again. Did we not agree you would pester me no more? I ask. Are you going back on your word? It does not count as pestering, he says quickly, and I need only name what I want, for he only wishes to test my moves. Master, Yeon puts in, unhurt. He has waited here 4 days. I frown, wavering, and Ju Dongyu draws a small cloth bag from his storage pouch. They are grade 4 herb seeds, he says, all mine if I will only practice with him, since he seeks not to win but to learn. I take the bag, weigh it, and sigh that it is only this once, and he cries, there will be no next time, thinking to himself he will surely beat me soundly this time. He draws a sword from his storage pouch and tosses it to me, a medium-grade flying sword, well suited to a Foundation establishment cultivator. Fight me with a blade, he says, and then brings out a long spear of his own. An inch longer, an inch stronger is it, and I hold the flying sword hardly knowing whether to laugh or cry. Under my eyes, Ju Dongyu says the old rules hold. No chi, only moves, and bids me come. This time Jin Gum and Su Han hear the noise and run over. But before they reach the valley mouth, I make the first move. I hurl the flying sword straight at Ju Dongyu, and his pupils blow wide so fast he thinks, and the man has great strength. He slips aside and thrusts his spear, for he sees me following close behind the flying blade. In a blink I tip my head, catch the spear shaft in my left hand and haul it back, and point my right 2 fingers like a sword at his throat. It happens too fast for Yeon's eyes to follow, and when we stop, my fingers already rest on Ju Dongyu's throat. He still grips the spear, but his body has gone stiff. How is your speed so great? He grinds out, sweat on his brow. Are you truly at the first level of foundation establishment? Were you to use chi, I tell him, you would outstrip me, and it is your rules alone that hand me the edge. For I am no match for you at all. Why do you insist on beating me by such rules? I ask, since we common cultivators have our dignity too. I let go, and his face flushes red as he grinds out that he never meant to trample my dignity. Then he flees as if for his life. Just then Jin-geum and Su-han arrive, and I ignore them, take up the flying sword and walk into the valley, an expert's air about my back and their eyes. A month later, Ju Dongyu comes again, with more herb seeds still, and I can only take them and beat him in 3 moves, which leaves him vexed and yet hopeful. His generosity makes me loath to drive him off. The year runs to its end, and winter snow buries Cheonei Valley. I walk the grounds with the 3 monkeys and, my rounds done, head for the loft, glancing at my lifespan as I go. Busy as this year of sowing has been, my lifespan has not grown slowly, for the outer sect caves and the Medicine Valley have yielded me no small store. In a few years more, Cheonei Valley and the 3rd Medicine Valley will come to harvest, and then my lifespan will begin to soar. I have just reached the loft when Na-han comes over, bashful and hesitant, and asks why I have brought no books of late. You wish to read, I ask. I thought you did not care for it. The valley is dull, he says, and a man needs something to ease his Tao heart, so I promise the newest volume of Investiture of the Gods. A few volumes of the Travels of Chengha would be welcome too, he adds with a cough. Seeing the awkward look on Na-han's face, I understand of a sudden that this is what the man is fond of, and wonder why he did not say so sooner. I clap him on the shoulder with a smile, saying I never thought Brother Na shared my taste. In truth, I tell him, against all the fighting and killing and the wars over orthodoxy and investiture of the gods, I favor the light water clear dealings between people. I favor the wandering of mountains and rivers besides, for those are what truly temper the Tao heart. My words ease him, and a smile comes to his face. The 2 of us fall to talking happily of the travels of Chongha, and our bond draws a step closer. Yet Na-han stays very reserved, never daring to touch the romantic matters in the book, speaking only of its strange sights and odd tales. Teasing the prudish Na-han leaves me much amused. Cheonei Valley will not be so dull now. Time runs like a loosed arrow, and 3 years pass in a blink. Another midsummer comes, and at 38 I look forward keenly to the 3rd Medicine Valley's first ripe herbs this year. Cheonei Valley, planted with high-tier herbs, must wait a while longer. That morning I am leading the Medicine Valley through their drills. Though Jin-geum and the other 2 are gone to the 3rd Valley, 3 new utility disciples have come, so the place stays lively. As I twist at the waist, I feel something, and a smile rises on my face. So Cheon marks my smile and asks what I am smiling at, and I put him off, telling him it is nothing, to keep drilling. A while later the drills end, the disciples scatter, and I walk toward my pavilion. Just at the foot of the loft, a whistle of split air comes from afar, and I turn to see a man flying over on a sword. It is Li Ah. Unseen these many years, Li Ah is still robed in black, yet the air about him has changed, a strand of white at his brow lending him a look of hard years. Seeing me from afar, a smile breaks on his cold, stern face, as though an iceberg were thawing. His cultivation stands at the 9th level of foundation establishment, stronger even I judge than Gi Rim was, and not far from the golden core. He lands, throws his arms about me in an embrace that stiffens me a little. Not bad, you have reached foundation establishment, he says, well pleased, gripping my shoulder. So you have not slacked. I break free of his grip and smile that he is back at last, and ask whether all has gone smoothly. Not smoothly, he says, shaking his head, yet it may be counted a blessing in disguise, and he bids me come inside to talk. I nod and lead him up. An hour on, the 2 of us sit across from each other in the pavilion over wine, and hearing out the years of his wandering leaves me stirred. It could be written into a book, I tell him, and he smiles that indeed it could, that he cheated death many times and it made him who he is. Down in the south, he sought the legacy of a soul transformation great cultivator, contending with genius after genius. He broke free of the ring only for that cultivator to try possession upon him. He turned the danger aside in the end, though he does not say how, and I guess it had to do with the soul housed in his body. Once the soul transformation danger passed, he learned a strand of sword intent in that cultivator's cave, and after 3 years of refining it, his own sword intent came reborn. On his way back from Jeju, he met other trials saving a woman a local noble family had crushed underfoot. But after he left, he heard she and her kin were driven to their deaths. At that, he went back and slaughtered the noble family, raising a storm across the whole province. The local government, after a few days' pursuit, gave up and even lifted the warrant. When Li Ah tells of it, his tone is not sorrowful. only a little cold. Lia asks me of a sudden what cultivation is for, whether only to chase an illusory immortality, when from the oldest days to now no soul has ever been immortal. I pour myself a cup and answer that I do not know what a cultivator ought to chase, only that a man must live at ease and do whatever sets his heart at rest. I spend my days planting flowers and herbs, I tell him, and in many eyes I squander my years. Yet I find such days full of interest, and the herbs I grow aid the sect, which carries some meaning. I do not take him for posturing, since after certain things a man is bound to feel lost. Lia cradles his cup and sinks into thought, and I do not disturb him, but draw out the travels of Changha to read, and the thinking runs a full half hour. When it ends, his eyes are bright, and he looks up to say that great truths are never found in the halls of power. He thanks me, for he knows now what he must do. He rises, takes a small white jade bottle from his storage pouch, and tells me it is a pill of 1,000-year spirit fat that tempers the sinews and bones. I may take 2 a year at most, he says, and he must go back to reach the golden core. Then, without waiting for me to press him to stay, he turns and leaves through the window. I sit silent, wondering why the boy so loves climbing out of windows, my gaze falling on the white jade bottle on the table, and why everyone loves to give me gifts. Helpless, I still tuck the bottle into my storage pouch. Summer nights come late, and I go to the third Medicine Valley. Stepping off the teleportation formation, my eye is drawn to a far pavilion where Jin Geum, Su Han, Yeon, and Ju Dong-yu sit together in easy talk. I walk over at once. Ju Dong-yu, deep in his talk, glances at me and smiles, and at his look the others turn and rise in a hurry. "Why are you here again?" I ask, coming up in annoyance. "Have you not emptied your storage pouch yet?" In 3 years, Ju Dong-yu has come no fewer than 10 times, each time bearing herbs and pills and magical artifacts. In our last spar, it took me 10 moves to beat him, the wind forced, and my acting force besides. "Rest easy," he smiles. "This time I come not to spar but to bid you farewell. I am leaving, and in all my years at the Taehan sect, you are the one true friend I have made." A friend, I hardly know how to answer. Yeon looks on him with some regret. For over the years, Ju Dong-yu has guided his cultivation each time he came, half a master to him. "What do you mean, all your years at the Taehan sect?" Jin Geum asks. Eyes wide, "Are you not a disciple of it?" Su Han and Yeon start at the same thought, that the man might be a demonic path spy. Ju Dong-yu smiles, smug, that he meant to keep low so as not to weigh on us. But since we part, he will feign no longer, for he is Ju Dong-yu of the Gyeolsun sect. At the words, the three stand stunned, which pleases him the more, and he even lifts his chin at me, hungry for the shock on my face. I put on a moved look, which sends his spirits soaring, until Jin Geum fires a cold shot, asking whether his name is so very great. His pupils widen slow, and his whole body stiffens. Fearing he might change his mind and wish to stay, I say it is great indeed, that he has cowed all the young of the Taehan sect. Then I beg his pardon that I did not know. At that his face softens, and at my signal Jin Geum and the others cry out in wonder, one after another, though his face twitches, for the words grate on him somehow. He draws a breath and warns that a great change is coming to the Taehan sect, that we should take care in our days. Then he wishes us green mountains and clear waters, and leaps into a rainbow of light toward the horizon. The three stand dazed at his movement, staring where he went. I wave them off, telling them to cultivate well and reach foundation establishment early, lest one day they lack even the standing to see him again. They bow and hurry away. I turn Ju Dong-yu's warning over, a great change coming to the Taehan sect, and hope it will not touch my valleys. Then I go up to the pavilion, shut the door, and sit at the desk with brush and paper to think on the book of Gojong and his son. The last volume of Investiture of the Gods has gone to the library hall, and it is time for a new book. After Investiture of the Gods, I ought to write Journey to the West, but I fear its sway would run too great, so I set it aside for now. First I will write the tale of Gojong and his son, to cool the heat and make Banon seem a little less divine. Of late the outer sect disciples puff Banon up as an immortal walking among men, which leaves me uneasy. So I mean to build the second book from the classic web novel plots of my old life. Gojong cultivated 500 years and was famed across the world, the strongest elder of the Taehan sect. In the year his Tao companion bore their youngest son, the demonic path invaded and the Taehan sect faced ruin. Gojong called down the power of heaven and earth with his divine ability to wipe the demonic path away, and fell into a spatial rift his own ability had torn. All thought him dead, though in truth he came to rest on a lonely island overseas and there stumbled on an immortal legacy. 20 years later, Gojong returned, only to find his son Go-yu cast down to a utility disciple, for someone had stolen Go-yu's heavenly spiritual root. Ju Dong-yu, of an age with Go-yu, had been close to him since childhood, and even after the fall still looked to Go-yu's rise. After hundreds of years of grievance, the two grew into the pillars of the Taehan sect. guarding the peace of the cultivation world. Turning it over, my eyes light with spirit, and I set brush to paper, and the first line reads, "The Fallen Genius. In the second year after Ju Dongyu left, in spring I go to the outer sect to hand in my book. Yu Chang takes a keen interest in the Taeon Immortal Venerable I have written, and draws me aside to talk a long while. Go Yu drags me up the stairs of the Medicine Valley Pavilion, and behind us shuffles a bent old servant he calls Old Man Shion. The name means nothing to me until I brush the old man with a lifespan probe out of long habit. The reading stops my breath cold. This half-blind grandfather is Yeo Beichion, the sect leader who supposedly perished when the seat changed hands. I keep my face smooth and ask, all innocence, why a distant kinsman of Gojong would be buried in a valley this dirty and this exhausting, when surely a better post could be found. Go Yu only laughs and says the Taehan sect was not built by his father, and that a place in my valley still beats a bed in the outer one. So the boy has no idea who he just delivered to my door. I cannot refuse him. Refusing would confess that I know the old man's true face, and that knowledge is the kind that gets a utility disciple quietly killed. Old Man Shion never once turns to look at me the whole way up, and that alone tells me he needs to play his part just as carefully as I play mine. Inside the room, Go Yu shuts the door and rounds on me, bright with hope, asking whether the book is out yet. I tell him it is, and that after long thought I made him the protagonist. He wants it to be true so badly that he asks me twice. The name Ban An has spread across the whole Taechang cultivation world by now, and the sect will push my second book hard, all the more since its title carries the Taehan name itself. This one feeds the wishes of the men above me, and once it is finished I will never write about them again. For the release, the book collection hall even handed me an extra fifth of the profits, a real concession from the sect. Go Yu is so pleased that he pulls a spirit stone straight from his storage pouch and slams it down with his thanks. The spiritual chi rolling off the thing drags my eyebrow up on its own. He tells me proudly that it is a peerless grade spirit stone, worth a full 100 high-grade stones, and that his mother gave him only 2 in all the world. One stone like this equals 1,000,000 low-grade spirit stones, while a utility disciple earns a single low-grade stone in a whole month. The gap between rich and poor in the cultivation world is simply obscene. Damn rich brat. I let the sourness rise, swallow it, pocket the stone, and promise him I will not disappoint. Once Go Yu hurries off toward the book collection hall, I come before Old Man Shion and give my name. He returns the courtesy so humbly that no one alive could guess he ever sat as sect leader. He is 742 years old, and his lifespan ceiling reads 850, which leaves him barely 108 years to live. A man who climbed to the sect leader's realm should carry a ceiling near 2,000 years, so his fall must have chewed the rest away. I walk in through the gardens, naming each herb and showing him the daily labor, and he listens with real care and asks after every variety we pass. He truly seems to have taken to the farming life. When I first heard how the sect leader fell, I assumed a plot, since his war with the elders had dragged on for years. Yet nothing in this gentle old man smells of a man betrayed. Still, the lifespan probe does not lie. The grandfather sweeping my paths is Yeo Beichion and no one else. His moving in changes nothing about the pace of the Third Medicine Valley. Jin Gum and the others spend their days in cultivation and barely speak to him, though every time I return, I sit and talk with the old man a while. Half a year slides past. Autumn comes, and the falling leaves drift down into Chione Valley. I stand on the path between the beds and watch my 3 monkey Yao beasts sweep the withered leaves into piles. Off on the hillside, Nahan sits with the Travels of Cheongha open across his knee, reading it as gravely as a scripture. His spear stands planted beside him, thin threads of spiritual chi winding into the blade and knotting the air around it into a faint coil of wind. Then I feel it, and my gaze cuts to the valley mouth. One look is enough, so I draw my eyes back. A figure walks in wearing robes of black and white, elegant, a folding fan turning in one hand. Li Heondo. After all these years, the Taechang Emperor still wears the same unhurried grace, and my probe names him at the 9th layer of the soul transformation realm. Nahan has noticed him too, and he stows the Travels of Cheongha in his pouch, takes up his spear and comes down the slope to bow first, with me a step behind. As Li Hiondo strolls toward the pavilion, he turns his head and asks whether his medicine valley pleases me. I tell him it exceeds every hope, that I had not so much as heard of half its high-tier herbs, and that his herb record has been a mercy. He asks, mild as anything, whether I have forgotten how he told me to address him, and I correct myself and call him uncle. That is right, he says, and laughs aloud, while at his other side Nahan quietly reels. The word uncle seems to move something in the guardian, and his face turns strange. We settle at the stone table, Nahan pouring the wine, and the emperor asks after Lia whether he has reached the Taeon sect by now. I tell him Lia returned last year. He asks whether the boy told me of his years away, He wonders whether I grasp that a Foundation establishment cultivator does not simply slip free of a soul transformation great cultivator's possession, without some secret hidden in his sleeve. I frown and say only that Lia shared no such secret, and that I could hardly interrogate him. Lee Hyondo smiles thin and says his son was born the dullest of all his children in aptitude. Yet since joining the sect, the boy has soared and surprised him again and again. He is glad his son can grow, he says, but afraid such growth will be turned by men with darker designs. I cannot read his true feeling toward Lia at all, but wherever the Emperor's heart sits, mine stays firmly with the son. I promise to feel around the matter in the coming years, though I have no intention of asking a thing. The Emperor turns to Nahan and asks, lightly, whether the Guardian thinks Lia has the makings of a crown prince. Nahan's face shifts, and he answers in a low voice that a humble general dares not overstep. Boring man, the Emperor sighs and shakes his head with a laugh. When his gaze swings back to me, I get in first and beg him not to drag me into such things, since I want no trouble, only to grow his flowers and his herbs. That earns a great roar of laughter, and he lifts the whole jar and pours the wine straight down his throat, far more the wild swordsman than the sovereign. Then he reaches for a second jar and does the same, and I understand that something is gnawing at this Emperor. Nahan sees it as well, and asks whether some trouble has come. After 3 jars in one breath, the Emperor laughs and says it is nothing grave, only that I must have read Investiture of the Gods by now. Nahan says he loves the book, and asks whether the Emperor does not love it too. He does indeed, Lee Hyondo says. Yet lately men have taken up Investiture of the Gods as a stick to beat him, calling him the tyrant of the tale. They say the Lee line has ruled 500 years, and the throne is due to another, that heaven's mandate now returns to the Gi clan. In recent years, the Gi clan has sent its disciples across the land to slay demons and win the people's hearts, and their name grows louder by the season. My stomach drops. Nahan flushes with fury and swears that at a single word he will go and cut down Ban-An himself. I feign worry while inwardly vowing to never again fetch that man his travels of Cheongha. The Emperor scoffs and calls the Guardian a fool. If he kills Ban-An, he says, he only proves himself so small and mean he cannot suffer a mere storyteller. Hearing that, I decide the Taechang Emperor is a wise ruler after all. My next book will be Journey to the West, and its emperor shares the surname Li, and though the tale carries a sting, the barb points at the heavens, not at any earthly throne. There is no heavenly court in this world, only the cultivation world, and mocking that suits the mood of every cultivator alive so long as I never name the Taehyun sect. While I plot, Nahan stays hot with anger. Lee Hyondo grows sober. The governors of the provinces all keep their own backing, he says, and slip further from the court's hand each year. Public grievance rises everywhere, and this use of my book against him is only their opening move. One day the sword will hang at his own throat, and he must raise a strength of his own, and Cheonei Valley has a great part to play, so I am not to fail him. He drinks for 3 full days before he goes, and across those 3 days he never stops letting his hopes for Lia leak out to me. By the end, I am certain the matter runs far deeper than a father's fondness. I let it all pass in one ear and out the other, unwilling to wade into their affairs. Before he leaves, Nahan warns me to bring him only the travels of Cheongha from now on, and never Investiture of the Gods again, and at that I can only laugh. The seasons turn, and 3 more years pass. This year, Cheonei Valley yields its first true harvest, and I reap nearly 5,000 years of lifespan in one stroke, which puts me in a fine mood. From now on, my yearly income will only climb. My total lifespan has already crossed 70,000 years, and I mean to keep driving it toward a full million. I bring Suhan and Jin Gum out to the outer sect that day, both of them Foundation establishment now. Years of practice and the low-tier pills I refined smoothed their way. After I hand them to the Elder Hall to register as proper outer sect disciples, I turn to go, and a familiar voice calls me senior brother. It is Yuk Gugap, robed in the black of the Demon Extermination Hall, 6 of its disciples trailing him. Since the sect leader changed, that hall's aura has swelled past even the law enforcement hall, and you meet its people at every corner of the outer sect. Yukugap tells me his master just promoted him, that both his treatment and his authority have grown, and that I should come to him anytime I have need. He presses a black token into my hand. I take the Demon Extermination Hall's token without a word of refusal, and smile that he has finally reached the life he always wanted. That lifts his mood higher, and he laughs that the past years were like walking on thin ice, that he dared not contact me for fear of dragging me down. Now the storm has passed, he says, and we can keep close. After a few more pleasantries, he hurries off with his men to hunt what he calls spies of the demonic path. I watch him go with a knot in my chest. The Demon Extermination Hall carries a foul name, the strongest arm in the outer sect, and the most hated. They say that to offend it is to be branded a demonic path spy and counted as good as dead. The disgust in the eyes around me is easy to feel, so I stop dwelling on it, and turn for home. Half an hour later, I reach the 3rd Medicine Valley, and find old man Xian at the stone tablet by the gate, stroking his beard, lost somewhere far away. Over the years, the two of us have grown easy together, and he plays the utility disciple so well that Jin Goem, Su-han, and Ye-yan never once caught anything strange in him. I greet him and ask why he is standing there. He looks at me with a kindly smile, his eyelids barely parted. A man with one foot already in the grave. He asks why I named the place the Third Medicine Valley when I hold only one other. I tell him the truth of my creed. I do not fight to be first or second, but I will happily fight to be third, since standing too tall in anything only draws the blade. Of the top three, the third is always the safest. His eyes open a crack at that, and he sinks into thought while I clap his shoulder and promise him roasted spirit chicken and fine wine, each bird bought at 10 low-grade stones. Ye-yan is not at the gate but on the central path, standing straight with his spear gripped in one hand, eyes shut, feeling for the thread that ties a man to his weapon. I have never asked what spear art or body tempering method he runs, since spear work does not interest me and my own mysterious yellow dragon chi art already tempers my body well enough. I call him over to drink and mark his senior brother and sister becoming outer sect disciples. Old man Xian asks, curious what I am aiming at, refining every herb I grow into pills for my disciples, when even gratitude fades with the years. Why not pour it all into myself instead, he adds. He adds that he is an old bag of bones who does not know how many days remain, and that pills spent on him are surely wasted. I tell him my aptitude is plain and chasing cultivation would only make me miserable, so the resources are better spent on the young who still carry hope. As for him, I say, old as he is still my disciple, and I treat every disciple the same. If the pills cannot lift his cultivation, they can still lift his vitality and let him live better. My gaze rests on Ye-yan as I say it, the sunlight cutting across my face, and something in the old man seems to stir. He tells me later that in that moment he remembered what Gojong said when he first recommended me. Do not let the boy's low cultivation fool you, Gojong had said. A man who could write Investiture of the Gods carries a wide heart. One who keeps to a medicine valley and labors for the sect even after fame and fortune has a character and bearing that outstrips a great cultivator of the Crossing the Void realm. Soon the three of us sit around the stone table with meat and wine. I lay out what I saw in the outer sect, and beside the matter of Jin Gom and Su-han, I raise the Demon Extermination Hall too, to feel out where the old man stands. He stays blank, smacking his lips over a chicken leg. Ye-yan speaks up instead, saying he actually thinks the hall is a fine thing. He met demonic cultivators more than once back in the Medicine Valley, he says, and the outer sect is simply too lawless. The hall's bad name likely comes from demonic path spies stirring the pot from the shadows. I nod, since after the hall rose my own valley stopped meeting demonic cultivators, and no more agents from the Thousand Autumns Pavilion came sniffing after me. Then Ye-yan says that once he reaches Foundation establishment, he does not want to stay in the Taehon sect. He wants to join the army. Jumping ship right in front of the old sect leader, I think, though of course he cannot know it. I ask him why. His face sets hard as he answers that the sect prizes spiritual root aptitude, that a man like him will struggle to ever climb. The army lets him slay demons and shield the common folk. His parents were killed by demons, he says, so he swore as a boy that once he learned spells he would walk the world as a hero who cuts the wicked down. Old man Xian lifts his head and nods slowly. I tell Ye-yan I never guessed he carried such a wish, and that his master supports him. The boy raises his bowl at once and drinks to me, then clinks it against the old man's. The warmth spreads, and once he has opened his heart, Ye-yan talks more than he has in months, and even old man Xian grows loose of tongue. Ye-yan asks whether I will bring the other disciples over from the Medicine Valley later. I shake my head and tell him to wait until he reaches Foundation establishment, since I would not have strangers disturb his enlightenment. The old man and I can manage the work between us. Each garden runs smoothly now, and the daily chores are few. That moves the boy all the more, and I talk with him of the years ahead over one jar of spirit wine after another until he is drunk. Summer's worst heat is bleeding away when 4 Demon Extermination Hall cultivators fly off from the Medicine Valley grass, and I stand watching them go without a word. Mu Sim leans in and asks why I am spacing out, and whether I mean to check all these boxes they left. Yu Gugap sent the 4 to deliver gifts, and they waited half the day for my return. I tell Mu Sim to count them himself, that I expect it is all herbs, and the trust in the task puts a smile on his face. I have handed him the whole running of the Medicine Valley now, and keep only the harvest for myself, and he has no complaint, since sharing my labor loses him nothing. Power is what he wants, not my absence, and with me gone the valley always feels short of something to him, so he spends my long absences in cultivation. I cross to the teleportation array and arrive soon at the Third Medicine Valley. Ever since Jin Gom and Su-han left for the outer sect, this place has gone very quiet. Ye-yan works, then drills his spear, and old man Xian is a man of few words. I step off the array to find the old man squatting in a bed, studying a fourth-tier herb, wearing the blank stare I have long stopped questioning. I climb to the pavilion and take out the Jami array record to read, since for a year now I have been quietly picking my way through it and gathering no few insights. Some hours in, I sense a stir, tuck the record into my pouch, and wait inside. Go-Yu's shouting reaches me before he has even landed, my name flung across the sky. Faint, then loud. I step onto the balcony and watch him and Go-Jong come streaking in on a golden wheel. The moment they touch down, Go-Yu bursts out with my name in half a sentence before Go-Jong cuts him off with a cough. I invite them up. Go-Jong lays 2 restrictions on the windowsill with a wave, sealing the room, and Go-Yu drags me down to sit, crackling with excitement. The Taehyun Immortal Venerable has taken off entirely, he says, the whole cultivation world watching, and even the neighboring dynasties and sects are buying the book from the Taehyun sect. Years ago, they mocked Ban-An for burning out his talent, and now every one of them chases the story and waits for him, Go-Yu, to prove his name is a genius. I do not know whether to laugh or sigh at how giddy he is. That the Taehyun Immortal Venerable caught fire does not surprise me at all, since a tale of a heaven-defying rise and the faces of the mighty slapped raw is pure emotional lightning to this world. Go-Jong speaks then and says they came for more than praise. The saintess of the Cheondo sect is preparing to come to the Taehyun sect to cultivate, and she is coming for me. The Cheondo sect is the foremost sect of the Great Wu dynasty, which borders our Taechang. The saintess is the daughter of its sect leader, so her stay will knit a lasting friendship between the two. Go-Jong will bring her to meet me himself, quietly, and I need only see her alone for she has sworn not to breathe a word of my Ban-On identity. My head begins to ache. Have I become a piece on a diplomatic board? Go-Jong strokes his beard and says the Taehyun Immortal Venerable has done great work for the sect's growth, that the Elder Hall prizes me highly. If I can make the saintess stay, he says they will grant me a sapling of a 7th-tier spirit tree. Once such a tree matures, it lifts the local spiritual chi enormously, and even a man of plain aptitude would find core formation no hard climb beneath it. They had meant to grant me techniques and high-grade artifacts, he says, but Go-Yu told them I shun conflict and love only my flowers and plants. So they changed the gift to the tree, which will also swell the whole valley's harvest, a benefit past reckoning. A 7th-tier spirit tree, that is the grade of an azure vine tree, and I cannot fathom how the Taehyun sect could produce a tree to rival the holy tree of the Thousand Autumns Pavilion. Perhaps the azure vine tree inside my 8 sceneries grotto heaven is no true holy tree, or has simply not finished growing. Whatever the truth, I could never refuse such a treasure. Keeping the saintess is nothing hard. She loves to read, so I will simply write her a few side tales of investiture of the gods. I draw a deep breath and ask when she arrives, letting none of my joy show, wearing worry and depth instead. Go-Jong smiles and says a year at most, and that I need not feel pressed. Go-Yu teases that I need not fear her proposing marriage either, the gulf in cultivation being what it is, since she only likes my books. I nod, being not so vain as that, for half the world likes investiture of the gods. Go-Jong glances at old man Cheon standing to the side and asks how he finds it here. The old man says it suits him well, that his valley master treats him kindly. Inwardly I sigh at Go-Jong, dropping a distant kinsman in my lap as if daring me not to grow suspicious. If you mean to act, I think, then act it to the hilt. And so I look at Go-Jong with open hesitation on my face. He reads it and smiles, saying the old man has long known my Ban-I identity, that it is love of investiture of the gods that brought him here. Beyond him, only the Elder Hall knows. They fear the exposure of my Ban-An name even more than I do, he says, and I let out a breath. Before investiture of the gods, disciples had always written books, but the storm Ban-An raised was without precedent. No one had dreamed a book could draw disciples and resources to a sect, or serve its diplomacy. Least of all after the Taehyun Immortal Venerable turned the eyes of the whole world upon us. Go-Yu suddenly says that Ju Dong-Yu has been good to Go-Yu, and that he takes back his earlier words and will not have the character Go-Yu bully him anymore. I look at him with a strange face. Go-Jong laughs that his own image reads well too, that wherever he goes he hears his name, folk asking when he will return to deal with that villain for his son. Then he coughs and refuses to spoil the suspense. I turn the talk to the saintess and press for all I can learn, the better to face her. Her name is Sin Jin, a triple spiritual root, the youngest daughter of the Cheondo sect leader. Her aptitude short of the top, yet her comprehension of musical spells extreme. She loves the zither, the chessboard, calligraphy, and painting. From the sketch alone she sounds gentle, not overbearing, and a woman who loves such things should have an easy temper. Late that night I stand beneath the azure vine tree in the 8 sceneries grotto heaven, drilling the wood spirit sword technique. Jaehwa Rim taught it to me when he was gauging my depth, a common art you can buy in the outer sect city. Being wood attuned, I mean to practice it by hand and pour no lifespan into it. Then again, real-time is lifespan too. Leaning on my grasp of the Teichang Startling Divine Sword and my present top-grade 5 elements heavenly spiritual root, I find in the Wood Spirit Sword technique the giddy feel of being a genius. Having mastered it already, I now chase a higher realm. Every art and spell holds minor realms, and by my own reckoning they run from beginner to initial glimpse. Entering the hall, minor achievement, thorough mastery can summit peak perfection, and at last returning to simplicity. It feels like grinding proficiency in a game, which I find far too much fun. The 10-foot vast sky dragon watches me from the tree, grown now into the true majesty of a dragon and not one scale crooked. I move within a 30-foot span beneath the branches, throwing after images until it looks as if 10 of me are practicing at once. The heavenly constellation sword shrieks sharp in my hand, its chi bursting out and dying, 2 arm spans off without so much as bruising a flower. After an hour I stop, and the blade slides home with a light crisp ring like a dragon's cry. I toss it into my pouch and stretch, and the vast sky dragon drops down with the voice of a small boy, begging me to teach him. I ask whether his dragon claws can even hold a sword, and he blinks and asks whether claws for a sword would really not do. That stops me short. There is something in that. I fish out the Wood Spirit Sword technique manual I copied and throw it to him, telling him to practice on his own and ask me what he cannot grasp when I return. He snatches it and reminds me to bring roast chicken. Early the next morning, just as I finish drilling the disciples and mean to head for the third Medicine Valley, Yeop Ran arrives. My junior sister has come, so of course I sit with her. She visits every year without fail, no matter how busy she is, and it would be a lie to say that does not move me. Since last year, she tells me, disciples have kept vanishing across the outer sect, and however hard her law enforcement hall digs, they cannot find the true culprit. Yet the demon extermination hall can always drag out a demonic path spy to confess. Since the sect leader changed, she and Yukugap no longer speak, the 2 halls having grown as hostile as fire and water. I tell her to let the other hall catch them and use the free time to cultivate, but she shakes her head. It is not so simple, she says, for the Demon Extermination Hall's master means to swallow the Law Enforcement Hall. The outer sect Grand Elder seems to share the wish. A hall with no achievements will be disbanded before long. Then come back if it is disbanded. I tell her, since the pills I can hand her are no worse than the hall's own keep. She refuses flat, her face grave, saying she will not take what I need for myself, and I find I have nothing more to say and turn the talk elsewhere. Because she wants a few more days, I decide to stay in the Medicine Valley until the spring festival ends before I go. After the festival, with the winter snow fully melted, I go first to Chione Valley to reap a few thousand years of lifespan and sow the next seed. 2 days on, I reach the third Medicine Valley. The Medicine Valley teems with people, and Chione Valley has its 3 monkey Yao beasts, so neither feels empty, but the third Medicine Valley is another thing, dead silent every time I come. Yeon and Old Man Cheon both love the hush and never trouble one another. I walk into a bed and start picking the ripe herbs, and the old man drifts over and asks why I always harvest by my own hand. I tell him I need something to do, and that gathering and packing them myself gives me a small satisfaction of contributing to the sect. He laughs that I am contributing in truth, not only in feeling, and I say I only hope the men above see it his way. Then he asks, out of nowhere, what I would do if I were made sect leader. My heart jumps, though my hands never stop, and I grumble at him to quit talking nonsense. He is no sect leader to hand me the seat, and I can manage a Medicine Valley but never the Tehan sect's millions of disciples. With my cultivation, I add, who would ever be convinced? I do not want the seat. I want to keep low and cultivate, and never meet pressure head-on. And if I sat as sect leader and an unbeatable foe came, could I even run? My loyalty to the Tehan sect does not run to the death. The old man only smiles and lets it drop, and follows me toward the pavilion once I finish. He tells me then that he knows an extraordinary cultivation technique, one even Elder Gojong has never seen, and asks whether I want to learn it. I turn him down, saying that with that time I would rather write books, and reminding him that I do not cultivate at all, and lean wholly on pills. He protests that I am too young to live so. This is called enjoying life, I tell him, acting within my means, and this is only my way, and every man's pursuit is his own. Why has the old codger so much to say today? Trying to break my Tao heart. He means to press further, but a sound cuts across the sky. We turn to see Gojong flying in on an artifact. A woman in black behind him, veiled, only a pair of bright and moving eyes showing. The Chiando sect saintess, here already. I have the old man carry the herbs inside and go to greet them, casting a lifespan probe as I move. She sits at the second layer of the Golden Core realm. 78 years lived, her ceiling above 1,000. The golden wheel lands. Gojong laughs and names her the Chiando sect saintess, Sim Jin, and bids me treat her well, then salutes her and sweeps off on his wheel. Sim Jin studies me with careful eyes, and even from the eyes alone I can guess a rare beauty. I salute and give my name, and she nods and asks at once which I love more, Investiture of the Gods or the Taehan Immortal Venerable. Testing me from the first breath, I keep a level face and say I love them both, that no one loves only a single book, since a shifting mood calls for a different tale, does it not? Her eyes light at that. She tells me she has written a book of her own and asks whether I would look, and of course I would not refuse. We climb to the second floor, and though I meant to leave the door open, since a man and a woman shut in a room breeds awkwardness, she closes it herself. We sit, and she draws a book from her pouch, her brows knitting, hesitant, before she finally hands it across. I take it, and my eyelids jump. The Travels of the Black Hero. What in the world? For a moment I do not dare open it, wondering wildly whether Simjin wrote the Travels of Cheonghwa itself, which would shatter every filter I hold for that author. But no, she comes from the Cheondo sect of the Great Wu Dynasty, and can never have published inside the Taeon sect. I calm myself and begin to read the Travels of the Black Hero. Sim Jin drops her eyes to the table, the one ear showing through her hair gone faintly red. One page in, I breathe easier. She is not the author of the Travels of Cheonghwa, for the gulf between the two is plain, though it is just as plain that she was imitating it. Every tale in the Travels of Cheonghwa opens on the local landscape, scenery first, then the play between people, and her book does the same. Only her travels have clearly not matched the Cheonghwa authors, and her scenery falls short, at least to my eye. The room falls quiet. After a while, she rises to browse the shelf, and a full half hour passes before I close the Travels of the Black Hero. She turns, a book in her hands, and asks how it was. I ask instead whether she loves the Travels of Cheonghwa. Standing at the shelf, she nods, and says that beyond cultivation manuals, it was the first book she ever read, though what she loves most is my Taehyun Immortal Venerable. Not bad, and cliché enough to ring true. I tell her I love the Travels of Cheonghwa too, that reading it was what first pushed me to write. She comes over at once, brighter than before, eyes shining, and falls to talking of it with me. Her Black Hero holds some feeling between man and woman as well, though nothing so open as Cheonghwa, a decent enough book. Through the Travels of Cheonghwa, the distance between us shrinks fast, and we range from it to Investiture of the Gods, and on to the Taehan Immortal Venerable. After a long while, I cannot help asking whether she has ever met the author of the Travels of Cheonghwa. She shakes her head slightly and says that much as she loves the book, she feels the man is not a serious sort, so she has no wish to meet him. I am different, she says. My styles from Investiture of the Gods to the Taehyun Immortal Venerable so far apart that they leave her curious about me. A small regret pricks me at that. Who exactly the Cheonghwa author is remains my own greatest curiosity in the whole Taehyun sect. She asks whether, once the Taehyun Immortal Venerable is done, I will write again of the struggle for the Orthodox Tao, in the vein of Investiture of the Gods. I give her a vague answer, probably, and ask in turn whether she means to stay in the sect. She smiles and says the Taehan sect is leaning on me, is it not? And that in truth, both sides only need a pretext. The Cheondo sect must join hands with the Taehan sect to cow the other sects of the Great Wu Dynasty and to stand together against the Demon Calamity. I raise a brow and ask what the Demon Calamity is. 9 dynasties sit side by side on this continent, she says, Taechang and Great Wu among them. Because the 9 have driven out their powerful monsters, the lands beyond them have become a wilderness where demons run wild. Those outer demons have grown strong enough now to threaten the 9, and though the immortal sects send disciples out to call them, the wilds are vast. Always some demon of rare aptitude slips through and matures. Within 100 years at most, she says, the 9 dynasties will face a demon calamity unseen in 1,000, and some of them will surely fall. Her eyes are heavy with it. Pressure rushes at me. I can already picture the broken mountains and rivers, the Taehyun sect's line buckling, utility disciples pressed onto the battlefield by force. No. Within 100 years, I must drive my lifespan to a full 1,000,000, unlock the next function, and then my cultivation will climb like fire. I ask her then, why she does not throw herself into cultivation instead of books, since her aptitude is no poor thing and the Cheondo sect stands behind her. She laughs and says every soul has its own destiny, that cultivation is not hers, that she prefers to read and write, and that perhaps one day she will attain the Tao through books instead. Who says a man must swallow the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to reach the Tao? She asks. She has combed the records from the ancients down to now, and finds no chi-drinking cultivator still living today. I cannot help seeing her anew. She truly dares to think. We talk a while longer before she rises to leave, and I see her down. At the foot of the stairs she calls a flying sword, steps onto it, and casts one line back as she lifts toward the horizon. She will make her immortal cave nearby, she says, and we should trade words more often. I watch her go with a smile on my face, glad not because she means to live close, but because the 7th tier spirit tree is now as good as mine. The sect moves fast. Not 3 days after Simjin leaves, the sapling arrives, delivered by Gojong himself. And once he is gone, I carry it to the heart of the gardens. Sapling, though they call it, the tree already stands 10 feet tall, and I plant it on the grass where the 4 gardens meet. Old man Cheon and Yeon watching behind me. When it is in the ground, I look it over with a wide, foolish smile. A Hyeonchang tree, 7th tier, its age reading 48 against a ceiling of 65,000 years. A ceiling like that mortals simply cannot compare. The old man chuckles that the Hyeonchang tree is no small thing, that though it bears no fruit, cultivating beneath it calms the mind and clears the spirit. My smile only widens, and I tell him to guard it well and let nothing happen to it. And he swears its roots are hardier than his old bones now that it is planted. I turn and go, leaving the old man and Yeon talking at the tree. I walk to the valley's edge near the cliff, where another tree sits in the grass, showing no sign of growth. It is the 6th tier spirit tree Yobrang gave me before, the root of a human-faced tree, buried these several years in a state of dormancy, its age still reading 0. I once fed it my own wood-attuned spiritual chi, and it swallowed the lot like a bottomless pit for no result at all. Squatting before it now, only the wooden tip breaking the soil, I watch a while and feel a faint current of spiritual chi run underground toward it. Tracing the source, I find it flows from the Hyeonchang tree. Could the Hyeonchang tree be reviving the human face tree? The thought pleases and worries me at once, for I fear the root will drain the Hyeonchang dry, since the thing came from the Thousand Autumns Pavilion and the very name sits ill with me. If it grows into some evil object, I will tear it out, for I will not let it ruin the 3rd Medicine Valley. Someone should keep an eye on it so it cannot swell in secret. Yeon has reached the 8th level of chi refining, his climb resting on pills, his days all spear, and though the drilling drinks in some spiritual chi, his cultivation barely stirs. Once he leaves, it will be time to recruit new hands.